All right, y'all. Welcome to All Politics are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Y'all know if it's Friday, we all know it's time for All Politics are Local. So tonight we've got a big show. There are a couple of things that are going to be going on. So we may try to play some live stuff for y'all tonight. So I'd say just hang tight. We'll be working in the background trying to pull up a couple of things. But tonight, starting off, Zaid is going to give you the rundown. Coming up at 6 o'clock, Zaid, what we got?
We got a conversation about Mumia Abu Jamal. This year is the 60th anniversary of the Black Panther Party. And April 24th is also the birthday of Mumia Abu Jamal, the 72nd birthday of Mumia Abu Jamal. He's now in year 45 of his wrongful incarceration. And there's going to be a week-long activity set up in Philly to lift up his case and to build support for him locally in the Pennsylvania area on that week. So we're going to have a conversation about Mumia Week and other all things Mumia with some young people who have been helping in an important way in recent months. Sophia Williams and Jian White. After that, just yesterday was the birth anniversary of the unconquerable Paul Robeson, right? And we're going to have Professor Kelly Harris do a serious conversation with us on the incredible legacy of Paul Robeson. And ironically, I found a commentary. We'll figure out if we can do it. Y'all figure out the tech stuff.
Yep.
On Paul Robeson some years ago. There is a direct tie to Robeson's impact on Mumia's generation. A direct tie that really needs to be appreciated. At 7 o'clock, Marquis Lewis, who is no stranger to this particular program and this platform, who's also a candidate for Essex County Commissioner, so we're told, is going to be talking about a field naming ceremony locally with former NFL star Tahir Whitehead. And Tahir has been with us before also.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to that. And guess who's coming back?
Yeah.
We're trying to pin our daughter down, but Congresswoman LaMonica McIver is going to be back at 7:30, talk about all things in the district and what's going on with her fight against the Trump administration, trying to lock her up for 17 years. Y'all heard what I said. 17 years. Yeah. And of course, and it looks like we got Superintendent Roger León coming back.
Yeah.
So we got a full house, full show, lots on tap. We should have mentioned, just by way of introduction, you mentioned some things we might be live streaming. We lost Bob Law just a couple of days ago. Bob Law is a pioneering legend in Black Talk Radio and a big influence on all of us that do this. And I don't know if we'll ever get to it. There's the recent departure also of Africa Bambaataa, and all that entails. And I'll leave that there. Full night. That's right.
It's a big night. We're going to be working in the background, doing some technical stuff, trying to get some things on, play some things for some folks. But in the meantime, Zaid, we got your guest that, on board. So let's introduce these folks and let's get to talking about Mumia.
I'm gonna introduce him in a very cloverleaf Jim way. And they don't know what cloverleaf Jim is, but I'm gonna have some fun with these kids. Right?
All right, have fun with
it. We both fighters, right? Cloverleaf Jim is Joe Frazier's Jim, and in the language of Joe Frazier, we want to see what y'all got. All right.
Remember, Joe was known for the hook, man.
That's right. It was the greatest hook of all time.
Yeah.
So you can't come in light. No, Sophia Williams, Jian White, two young people who have been very important in doing the work locally and the ongoing work to build support for Mumia Abu Jamal. As y'all were, before we brought y'all on, we explained in an introductory way that his birthday, April 24th, is on the horizon. He will be 72, and we are in year 45 of his captivity, of his wrongful captivity. And so we're looking forward to really having a serious conversation about all things Mumia, particularly that coming week and what others can do. And then we're going to swing right behind that to a conversation on Paul Robeson. We're trying to play one of Mumia's commentaries on Paul Robeson. So, y'all, what's up? Talk to us. What's happening? Right?
Well, it's
your first time with us, right?
It's true.
All shy and whatnot. I don't know why. She's been around us long enough.
No, I'm trying to come on from mute. I'm outdoors, so forgive me. Jian, take the floor.
You got to use your outdoor, baby. That's what you got to do.
No, we're here. We're grateful for the invite as always. And
all right, so tell everybody what's happening on the week of April 24th.
Yeah, it's good to be back with you, Baba Zaid. It's cool to see that the charm wasn't just for the march. The spirits are still high year round. And I think that's what we're trying to do with this upcoming Mumia week, is try to keep that energy year round, that political advent of lifting up Mumia and his mission year round. This is a person, it's funny, the 45th year of Mumia's incarceration will start this December 9th. But he's 72 years of principled, dedicated action, regardless of the trials that he's been facing, regardless of being sought after and investigated by COINTELPRO from a very young age, before he was even at the full extent of his powers, to now facing over a decade of medical and elder abuse within the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections. And so we're putting on this basically 5 awesome events to not just draw people's attention to Mumia, his mission, and his current condition right now, as the Department of Corrections has consistently made him an exception to any sort of progressive policy from our district attorney or from different officials or whatnot. We're trying to actually put a fire under them and try to get the whole community involved. And so we're calling it Mumia Week from Sunday, April 19th. We're going to have a kickoff event at Tabernacle United Church here in Philadelphia, where we're inviting pretty much everybody connected to this historic movement to come down to Philadelphia to be able to interact with a new generation of organizers, cultural workers, and politically motivated people that are trying to take their politics to the fullest extent, and to see us be able to bring not just Mumia home, but so many people home, And at the end of this week, it's culminating in a massive March of Innocence, we're calling it, on Saturday, April 25th. We're kicking off at 2 p.m. at Malcolm X Park in West Philadelphia. We're having a little rally there, and then we're marching from there to the One Art Community Center at 1431 North 52nd Street for this awesome grand finale for the week, a big block party where we'll be able to celebrate the new relationships with each other, highlight some of the stories of not just Mumia, but different people incarcerated in the state of Pennsylvania and their different experiences with state violence, all to hopefully get the larger community involved, not just in this necessary work, but I think the grand tapestry of really important and vital abolitionist work happening in Philadelphia right now. There's so many different groups and so many different people that are hitting this from different angles, and we want to just use Mumia Week not just as an opportunity to get Mumia the help and the healthcare that he so rightfully deserves and has been so long denied, but to be consistent with Mumia's mission and to take these ideals past him and out into the community and out into our neighbors and the different people affected by state violence, by this corrupt planet. I think one of the main reasons we were going with this focus of a march of innocence is not just to talk about how Mumia is innocent, how Mumia has been wrongfully convicted and deprived of justice for 44 years, but the idea that innocence is something that is innate in all of us, that is consistently robbed by these carceral systems, robbed by an empire that commits genocide unashamedly in multiple countries, in multiple areas, by an empire that consistently tries to rob people from their loved ones and from their families and create systems of extraction and separation to divide us. We really want to emphasize that this is innocence that we're all indebted to, and innocence that we want to protect for a new generation, for a brighter future of people that are going to take up this movement and take up this charge, while also really highlighting innocence that has been lost and robbed from so many people that have come before us and so many people that have built this movement up to what it is today. And so I'm really excited for it. You know, I could go into more details about the other fun events. Like there's going to be an art build nature event. We're partnering with the Girardin Wellness Garden, who is currently being forced out by different land developers in the area. So we're trying to give a big showing to that garden of supports. We have some awesome memory workers that are coming in and some other different artists to be able to talk about the intersections between art and nature and revolution. And this is just one of the examples of making an event that not only allows us to bring people together, but is also really centering Mumia's politic and Mumia's mission of sovereignty for Black and brown people that is consistently being taken away from us. So I'm really excited. Saturday, April 19th is our kickoff event. And Baba Zaid, you know, you're going to be one of the people speaking at that event. So I hope you're excited the way that we're excited.
Man, we've been turning it up for decades. Welcome to the club.
I just want to
Yeah, come on, jump in.
yeah, I just want to add that, you know, this time around for me, and I'm hoping for other comrades as well, forgive the background noise, this feels so much more that important and so much more key, just because we had such a successful March in December, right? And you know, people are still reeling about the March, and people are still speaking about how much was put into that to ensure that Mumia's voice, Mumia's history, his legacy continues to be heard and known through the areas of Pennsylvania, right? So we want to build off of that. We really want to build off of that energy, off of those great people that we met, and also the fact that we did something very powerful, knowing that Mumia has been sacrificing his pretty much his whole life behind bars in basically in hell, and we're out here doing all that we can to bring him home. So this will be a fun week. We're not making it a week of just events. It's going to be something that we can build upon, we can put linkages with, because we now see that more and more people are fed up, right? They're very fed up and frustrated with what they're seeing around them. People who thought that, you know, times like these will never come are now seeing the realities of fascism and complete dictatorship that is mind-blowing. So we see more and more, especially younger folks, who are wanting to get involved, do something. And so we're asking people, if you're doing something in your particular region, let us know. This is not just a Philly thing. We're doing it big in Philly this year, but we're also asking people that wherever you are, please feel welcome to put on an event. Let us know. Folks can email Jian, you could drop your email. Folks can also email Bring Mumia Home at Gmail, and Mobilization for Mumia. Check out the Instagram pages of Bring Mumia Home.
Let's deal with that. Let's deal with that. And Jian, you could drop it in the chat. She's outside. Drop in the chat the links that we need to use so folks can follow everything that's happening and jump in where they fit in.
Right.
Of
right?
course.
We
Wait, you were
want
gonna say
everyone
Sophia?
involved.
Yeah.
No, just to say we want everyone involved, and we want people to feel that this is something they can do in their own strength too. So come to Philadelphia, host something where you're at, but at this point, do whatever you can because Mumia must come home. And also, this is not, we always say free Mumia, but we always say free all political prisoners. So we have to remember of our other Black Panther members, veterans who are still imprisoned as well. So we're doing this big as well to celebrate the longevity of this movement to free them all.
Okay. Okay. Now having said that, now there are actions in other places. Mumia, the campaign to free Mumia Abu Jamal is an international campaign. Do you want to highlight some of the other places and other folks doing actions?
Yeah. So from what we've seen so far, I know that, and forgive me if I don't have everyone's actions on the top of my head, but I know for sure our comrades in the UK, they're doing something on the 24th, a speaking engagement with our dear Mama Julia Wright and some other comrades. And there's a flyer out there for that, but that's happening on Mumia's birthday in the UK. And I'll try to see if they have some form of, live stream or something that we can tune into. And I know that there's usually our German comrades who usually are doing great things, but I actually think our German comrades are doing something within the next week at the consulate consulate office or something. But that's what I know for sure at the moment. I haven't heard any particular actions publicized as yet, but things are still being put in the works by others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think if I could jump
Good.
in real
Yeah,
quick.
Jian.
Yeah, I think one of the big reasons why we felt some sort of big display or big week of programming was really important to kind of send out signals into the noise to say, hey, this is a movement that is international, that has touched the hearts of so many people, as
Right.
Mumia has consistently lifted up revolutionary and decolonial movements internationally in Palestine, in Sudan, in Venezuela, in Iran. Um, right now, we're also at an interesting crossroads in the movement where there's also a lot of disconnection. There's also a lot of
Yep.
places where people have this energy, and what we're hoping to do with this a week is to create connective tissue. If we can broadcast out, hey, we're doing this event, hello out there, we would love to hear back. I would love to hear more from the different comrades in France that I know are also trying to stage some sort of event. There is a whole contingent in Mexico to free
Yep.
Mumia, and what we're hoping to do is do events like this, but also to call out and reach out into the void to ask, like, hey, how can we continue to build more alignment? How can we continue to build up the structure and the formation of this movement so that we can really mobilize? That we can really mobilize not just locally. In Philly, I think we do have a lot of great connections, but I think after we do this week, we're really gonna be investing a lot of time into New York and trying to build up the connections with folks there. And I
Right.
think that's kind of the fun part about this to me is being able to interact with new people internationally, domestically, that also have the same politic, but have specific different experiences and perspectives on it. Because I think that is part of the story of Mumia and his mission, in that it's not just about one man, it's about the mindset that he's trying to get us involved with, which is to be anti-imperialist, to take our empathy and to take our politics to the fullest level, to free people from the conditions that have been placed against us by the state, by capital excess, and yeah, by the
Yeah.
forces of evil. You know, I mean, I don't know if you were seeing some of these tweets from the White House, but they're giving forces of evil to me. So if you're out there doing an event, please let us know and let's talk further and build those relationships.
I want to put a pin in two things. One, Sophia is in New York. She's one of our New York organizers in New York City. Has for a long time played a critical role on the ground in the states for Mumia. Right? And I also want to put a pin in the fact that although we have some good, fresh abolitionist activity of a kind in Philadelphia now, that has been a long time coming. Right? That is relatively fresh, and it really does need to be built out as wide as it can. So I want to just wind us down on two things if we can. One, the abolitionist center just had a victory in court recently. I don't know if y'all prepared to talk about that. That doesn't affect Mumia directly, but is a strike, a blow against death by
DBI.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? Pennsylvania, most people may not realize this, is one of the states in this country that gives the longest natural time in sentencing. One of the longest. Pennsylvania, Louisiana, Texas, and Florida, right? Alabama is in the conversation now in an ugly way, right? But when life is life. It's not 25 years or 30 years as it is in some states. It's life. So there are some important developments there recently. And then I just want us to look ahead too, because Mumia was convicted and given the death penalty, the death sentence, on July 4th weekend, 1982. And for years, we have always done something strong in Philly around that particular time of the year, including the most significantly back in 1999 when we bum rushed the Liberty Bell and shut it down, did a mass civil disobedience, right? This year is also the 250th anniversary of something called the Declaration of Independence, where they talk about we the people and all those wonderful sounding things. Meanwhile, most of our ancestors were plantation property, right? So there are important actions to counter that. And straight in this line of march, the People's Senate is calling for major action in Atlanta, right? For example. So just want us to put a pin in those two things as we wind down, and y'all can respond as you see fit. Y'all ready?
No, I feel like we could go back and forth. I spoke a bunch at the end. Do you want to chime in about the fourth, or?
I'll just say really quickly about with this victory. Not that I have read every detail there is to read about it, but it's definitely a huge victory that came out of Pennsylvania. But we also know that any victory like that is really the people's victory. And it's important to recognize how many young lives will be impacted by that victory. So we, as you said, Baba Zayid, it's not a direct one from Mumia, but if we continue the work and continue this kind of hard-hitting, gut punch moves, this can be something to impact folks like Mumia and others like him. And we recognize too that Pennsylvania is a hard state in many ways. So if something happens there, we can only imagine what else can take place. So on the note of just recognizing that this place is celebrating 250 years of whatever they say it is, we like to remember that we are celebrating resistance in many ways against complete tyranny and complete oppression day in, day out from day one. And so you mentioned July 4th in Atlanta, and that's also something I'm working on. hard on with the People's Senate. We're looking to make this not just an event. This is beyond just an event. It's a weekend of celebration. It's a weekend of education. It's a weekend of just vitality,
And you got to
renewed,
clear up that celebration piece. Celebrate what?
celebrating resistance, celebrating our
All right.
strength.
All right. Well, make that clear. 'Cause some people talk about we celebrating something that we can't celebrate.
Yeah.
All right.
Celebrating our resistance, because we know that, this whole place would be crazy with their so-called 250 years, but we're celebrating much more than that, right? Because we recognize that it's going to be the same old if we don't change something. And what the People's Senate is looking to do, and this is beyond the People's Senate, this is really for all people. What we're all looking to do is to create alternative voices, a way of being able to fend for ourselves, a way of not having an elitist, uber, you know, rich government speak for us. So this is what that weekend will be about. We'll have many speakers, performances. It will just really be a culture of different folks coming together. And we're recognizing that everyone cannot come to Atlanta. So be on the lookout. Maybe we can come back on your show, a few of us, Baba Zaid, to speak more about that weekend, to get more people involved. But
Got Jaleel already lined up, baby.
right, there we go. There we go. So again, it's just important that you said that about the linkages, and Jian, you said it too, because this is truly an intergenerational fight. And as much as we have the younger folks involved, we still have our elders going at it. So, when we have folks like you, Baba Zaid, speaking with us, mentoring us, coming to events and throwing it down, and all that you do, and many others like yourself, Mama Pan, and the list goes on and on. I can't think of all the names right now. We recognize that is a struggle we have to continue. And truly, there is a huge movement internationally for Mumia, and we need to be in the streets again. We have to be back in the streets, and I'm really happy and proud of the work I'm seeing now in areas of Philly, where we have so many groups that are just pulling together and helping to make that week, the Mumia week, a great success, and having other groups, other political prisoner groups, such as our dear brother Shinapli, and our dear young brother Kwame Beans Shakur, and many other folks trying to come together. The Free Kamal Siddiqui campaign continues to raise up his voice, and the fact that he's in prison, a father, a grandfather. So this is all connected, and this is connected because we live in a country that says they don't have any political prisoners. So we have to ring that tune continuously. So be on the lookout, and hopefully we can get some swag going for all of this.
Now, I want to put a pin in several things that you said that are important to lift up. One is that Kamal Siddiqui is the co-parent and former partner of Assata Shakur, who was framed for the killing of an Atlanta police officer in 1970 because he refused to cooperate with the FBI. All right. And his railroading into prison was overseen by the same judge that oversaw the railroading of Imam Jamil Abdullah Amin into prison, one Stephanie Manis, and a claim and some bogus claims of, look at what we're doing in the quote New South. I want to also say that it's important that what's happening in Georgia would be tactically and strategically important for Kamal, because Kamal is a Georgia state prisoner, right? So we need to be building supports for Kamal in Georgia to help build support for him, just as we need to build supports in Pennsylvania, because Mumia is a Pennsylvania prisoner. So I want to just put a pin in that. Jian, you want to add anything to what Sophia just said?
Yeah, I think when I think about the Derek Lee ruling, being able to declare that felony mandatory sentencing of like a life sentence for felony murder is unconstitutional, then we can change any of the laws, because this whole system is inhumane. Who cares about constitutionality? But I think it gives us an awesome opportunity to talk about criminality and carcerality and how these are essentially like moving fence posts to fit the state's whims at any given moments, and when we're able to develop people power to push on these things, because you're right, Baba Zaid. I mean, the movement work happening in Philadelphia and the movement work that helped accomplish this historic ruling has been going on for the past couple of decades. Has people have been investing time and energy and care into it consistently, and so I think it just provides us a new opportunity to be able to talk about the way laws are created and legality is used and weaponized against people that are trying to not if not be able to hold the state accountable to get rid of it and declare sovereignty within their own communities and within their own parishes. And I think when I think about what makes me excited about the next stages of the work that we're all getting into, when I think about the Mumia week, and for example, on Friday, April 24th, which is Mumia's birthday, we're going to be having a rally outside of District Attorney Larry Krasner's office to try to get him to release the remaining Mumia boxes of evidence that have not been disclosed, to push him to stop making Mumia an exception for this politics, but to also start a campaign. Mama Pam came up with the title Fist Up Fridays, that
Mhm.
we're just going to be on his neck
Sustain
every
it.
Friday up
Yes.
until 4th of July, and use that as an opportunity to get folks in the Philadelphia area, but also to build relationships on the path to SEI Mahanoy throughout Pennsylvania, to gather more alignment on the other campaigns of our movement, on the Kamau Siddiqui campaign, on the Zulu Whitmore campaign, on the different things that the Spirit of Mandela and the People's Senate are preparing for the 4th of July. I mean, the other thing I think about for the 4th is that we're hosting the World Cup in the United States, and specifically in Philly. We're hosting our round 16 game on the 4th of July. And round 16 is basically the point in the World Cup where the layout, like the final set of games, are pretty much decided. This is the time where like the most people lock in and focus on the sport of like, oh, it's only just 4 more rounds and then we know who wins. And so I know there's also different groups that are trying to plan around that, trying to plan around how do we consistently use these opportunities to highlight the conditions apparent to folks. How come Sherelle Parker only really cares about the well-being of this city if it's to make it look pretty for a public event or
Sherelle
to
Parker is
different?
the mayor of Philadelphia,
Oh
for
yeah.
folks being aware of who that is. I just want to make it plain. Go ahead, keep going.
No, for real. Yeah. Sherelle Parker's the mayor of Philly, hopefully a one-term mayor. But for real, how come there's only investment in filling potholes or fixing infrastructure if it's to make it look pretty for onlookers or for developers or for the corporate elite? People notice these things when they're seeing their transportation underfunded and their different community services cuts, SNAP benefits cuts. And we can all use these opportunities to showcase, well, the people that have actually tried to defy the state, that have actually tried to take these reasonings, take these things that they've observed and say, hey, what the hell are we doing? They've been locked up. They've been taken from us wrongfully, and some for decades and decades on end. And we're hoping to use that energy, that animosity, and that frustration to build a path of resistance and a path of revolution that reverberates around the country, around the world, because it's high time Mumia came home. It's high time Kamau and Zulu came home. But it's really high time that people got involved and got invested in a long-term community solidarity struggle for the betterment of our world. And I think that's the ultimate goal with not just this week, not just these campaigns, but the passion and the politic that brings us to this work. So,
well, speaking of passion that brings us to this work, Sophia comes to us by virtue of her mentor, right? Joanna Fernandez. And then Joanna and Pam are regulars when we do conversations on Mumia, right? You didn't get a chance really to introduce yourself. What brought Jian White to this work, and what organizations are you working with now?
okay,
Hot
yeah,
seat time.
I know, right? I didn't think this would be about me at all, but uh, let me see. I think what brought me to this work. So I started getting into organizing in when I was attending church, and myself and a couple of my peers, we felt like, we're hearing about this guy Jesus talk about freedom to the captives, freedom to the oppressed.
You look like Mumia, right?
Now that I've been in it for a minute, I think they got the hair right at least. So, but I think it was that. Yeah, it was that initial opportunity to see, like, hey, there's a space for an idea for a better world, and then just trying to apply it to the immediate people around us. Like, we were organizing in churches around the country saying, like, hey, we have issues with racism, sexism, homophobia, the things that and religious trauma that's also stemmed into like spiritual abuse and God forbid physical or sexual abuse even. And being able to sift through folks that were really willing to cling towards that liberatory focus and those that would rather continue to align themselves with a sort of conservative ideal that ended up just restricting other people's freedoms or removing people's access to justice. That was a really radicalizing moment for me, and that made me want to get more involved into the different struggles of our time. And I think that's what led me to groups like the W.E.B. Du Bois School of Abolition and Reconstruction. And from there, I got to connect with so many different people.
Tell everybody who the teacher is for the W.E.B. School.
Oh, well, there's a couple of different ones. I could think of Gio Maher, who got kicked out. I'm not even gonna say that, but basically, he is an awesome scholar of Latin America and different revolutionaries that was talking about these conditions to the point that the academic population was like, we had enough with them. And I think different other people who had been removed from different institutions or exiled or pushed out of places because of their politic, because of their staunch criticism of the state and how it has its tethers in so many things, but also how they were unwavering in that criticism and stalwart in their politics. I think that all pushed us into a place to all meet with one another and be able to learn from each other and experience one another's perspective. And that brought me to so many other teachers. I got to lift up my friends, Talia and Ant, who also helped me develop myself and stream and sharpen my politic a bit. And I think from there, then I met Sister Yane, who invited me to come to a Free Mumia movement Zoom call. We were meeting in person in Philly at this place called Cedar Works, and I just remembered the meeting being a little all over the place, but also filled with a lot of passion and a lot of promise and a lot of vision, people coming together and understanding that this world is not just changeable, but like able to be created in the image of the people that have built it up for so many years, that have been forgotten, Black and brown people internationally. And it just put me in a position where I realized that I maybe won't end up being the type of person that I wanted to be when I grew up exactly, but that it would be important uh, to embrace these politics and to embrace this tradition if it meant that I could save just one other person from the truly heinous conditions that are thrust upon us. So that's a bit, I think, how I got involved in organizing and whatnot.
Cool.
And I guess today, to close it out, I guess if I were to talk about groups, I would say that I'm with the mobilization for Mumia, or the Free Mumia movement. And when I interact with other groups, it's like so that we can expand that. We also do a socialist soccer league in West Philly, the Everyday People Football Collective. Yeah, because soccer is an internationalist
Put that in your World Cup
sport. I didn't want to give away too much game right now, but that's something that we are trying to plan for right now, trying to get folks to see the World Cup as what it is, an opportunity for the United States to obfuscate from its sins, from the genocide in Gaza, from the attempt.
They're going to have so many pigs mobilized to keep white folks safe. It ain't going to be funny. They ain't going to do none of that.
Well, we've got a good cadre of white folks to be on the front lines for that chicanery. So
right on. Go ahead. We got Ed. I want you to ask them the ritual question as we go out. We already seen that he's ready to jump in. The great Kelly Harris is here. We've got a commentary. I don't know how to access it. Of Mumia on Paul Robeson. That's our next conversation. And Kelly Harris is a contributor to an important volume on Mumia called a biography of Mumia in 25 voices, edited by Todd Burrows. So just go and ask them the ritual question, and we'll make our transition.
Can I say one last thing before the ritual?
Sure.
I just want to plug at the very end, because also people aren't RSVPing to the Mumia Week events. You can RSVP by going to luma.com, LUMA.com/Mumia Week. Yeah. We've got 5 great events. Please RSVP so we know how much food to get. All right. Thank you. And you can
put that in the chat so that
we did.
Yes,
okay.
We got 3 links for you in the chat.
Yes,
okay. All right. So here's our ritual question. We are a political hip hop radio talk show. Been around for 17 years, pushing on 20. When you all are out doing the work, what hip hop song that you guys are listening to politically that motivates you to keep pushing, right? Or what song of the revolution that gets to you guys from a hip hop perspective that just keeps y'all pushing?
I don't have an exact answer because it can change from time to time. But
that's fine. This is not for you. Is your answer?
All right, this is not hip hop, but I'm definitely trying to do some Marvin Gaye right about now. Not hip hop, but
his death was a few days ago, and it was a horrible situation the way he went out of here. And he was one of our voices for the generation of the Black Liberation Movement. Jian, what say you, son?
Yo, I think I've been waiting my whole life to be asked this question. I got to put on Shook Ones, of course. Oh man, I also think of. I love listening to Denzel Curry. He's got this awesome song Pig Feet with Terrence Martin on the. It's just an awesome song about police brutality and how we're not taking this shit anymore. I'm going through my playlist right now. You know, I gotta lift up Blood on the Fang by Clipping, talking about the history of different revolutionary moments and how, and kind of comparing them to like he's using this sort of artistic motif as like relating them to like vampires coming to like get back against the real bloodsuckers. You know, Streets on Fire by Lupe Fiasco, a classic off the
Yes.
cool. You know, let me see. You know, it's not really rap, but Politicians in My Eyes by Death, you know, one of the really prolific uh, uh, black bands, you know, it was really great. I gotta lift up. Oh my gosh. There's just so many. There's so many, you know.
That's
I
good.
could
That's
go
good.
on forever. So Be It by Clips,
Okay.
you know. I'm just like, yeah, yeah. If you want to invite me back on, we could talk just hip hop. I'll talk for like an hour as a friend, but also as wanting to receive from the great teachers that I'm seeing before me. And maybe I'll have to shave my head before I'm allowed into that beautiful coalition, but just let me know. I got the buzzer in the back ready.
Not necessary. Not necessary. Thank you both. We got all the links in the chat. We're going to take this conversation up another notch in a minute with the great Kelly Harris. We appreciate y'all. We'll be in touch
Appreciate it.
within a couple of weeks. We'll see you next week.
Yes, yes. Thank you. And great show. And thank you for all the work that you do. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Yes.
Thanks for having us.
Right on. The great Kelly Harris has come. Let's come
Hey,
back.
how you doing, Bob? What's going
Good to
on,
have you.
Bob? And, what's going on, Ed?
What's good, Brother Kelly? What's good?
Ain't much,
Kelly,
ain't much.
yesterday it was a couple of days ago. I guess it was the 8th. PSL, that's the party for everybody's benefit that may not know what PSL is. The local iteration of Party of Socialist Liberation had an anti-war rally in Newark, and I had just come from the Express Newark Center, which is supposed to be a part of the Paul Robeson space in Rutgers, Newark. And something told me when I got on the mic to ask, and it was a very young audience, and I was hugely healthy in that way, but something told me to ask, how many of y'all got ties to Rutgers? And a bunch of hands went up. I said, how many of y'all learned something about Paul Robeson when y'all out was Rutgers? And all of them just said, we didn't learn. Yeah. I said, that's a problem.
Wow.
Particularly at a time like this, especially young folks wanting to figure out how to identify with something called socialism, right? And being anti-war and anti-fascist, Paul Robeson is somebody you definitely need to be studying. So,
absolutely.
Introducing some community folks or some young folks who ain't never heard nothing about no Paul Robeson before, but know that all this stuff with these crazy white people going on right now ain't right. What would we say to them, Professor Harris?
Well, it's interesting. So, it's something very simple. So when we're talking about Paul Robeson, so beyond his, well, I should say not beyond, in addition to his excellence in athletics and excellence on the stage, he says that he found his political awareness in 1933. And it's interesting because that year in 1933, once he finds his political awareness, one of the first places he gives a talk at is the Socialist Club in Cambridge.
That's right.
So and then from that point on, even in the mid 30s, he's over in Africa. He's in London. While he's in London, he's meeting with Amy Ashwood Garvey and her salon. He's meeting with CLR James, Jomo Kenyatta, Kwame Nkrumah, so he becomes very engaged, and he starts defining himself by the late 1930s as an anti-fascist. As a matter of fact, when they brought him in front of the House of Un-American Activities Committee in the 1950s, And they asked him, was he a communist? He said, well, he said, well, it's interesting you asked me that and didn't ask me if I was a Democrat or a Republican, because he said, I see them all as the same, as in terms of being a legitimate political party. He said, but I define myself as an anti-fascist. So that would be, I think, something to share with those folks. That's how he defined himself. And I would say that he was the leading anti-fascist during the Cold War era. And he probably, and we know the government saw him as that because they tried to ruin him. They tried to ruin him. Anybody that gets their passport taken away for 8 years and not allowed to travel abroad because of because they're afraid of what he might say and who he might be organizing with overseas, you know what kind of threat he is, or what kind of threat he was.
Let's back up. I want to back up because this is a very community-based audience and organization, and you laid out we went right into some important turning points on his life and his development, right? That I'm familiar with, that Ed's familiar with. But let's back up and just unpack who Paul Robeson was. I heard he's straight out of Jersey. I mean, how he get to be all this big and whatnot? I know he was tall and had muscles and stuff, but just who was this cat and what was he? What made him so loaded?
All-American football player, brilliant orator. People have to listen to his voice to understand how powerful his voice was. It's only a few people that have had a voice like his. Great baritone voice, great concert singer, great actor, lawyer, who married somebody he was equally yoked. As Londa Robeson was equally brilliant in her own right, and a brilliant activist and organizer. As a matter of fact, she probably was hip to Africa and what was going on in Africa before he was.
Right,
and
she was an anthropologist in the relationship. That's right,
and helped him along in that. So people have been doing that more. I would say probably in the last 25, 30 years. When they talk about Paul, they talk about this Londa and talk about what she's done and her organizing and the work that she did. But Paul Robeson was, and I say this without any hyperbole, one of the most talented and gifted, uncompromising people in American history. He was just that brilliant. Someone who could speak over 20 languages, who would sing folks, because he was connecting with the people so much, he would sing folk songs in their language, whether it was Mexican or Russian or whatever. Just an amazing human being. And really, when we unpack him and when we look at him, he was ahead of the civil rights movement and things that movement would be saying in the 1960s and and particularly even brother Dr. King. Paul Robeson was saying these things in the 1940s when the NAACP was doing a purge of its membership. And, not to go too far, but let me say this, man. What's interesting about this history, NAACP gives him in 1945 the Spingarn Medal, their highest medal.
How about that? By
1949 and 1950, they dissing him. Matter of fact, in 1950, Walter White wrote the Strange Case of Paul Robeson. That same year, the Crisis put out Paul Robeson, Lost Shepherd. And remember, NAACP 1950, they're purging their membership. NAACP is very much an anti-communist organization.
Let's get this on that. Now, when I was growing up and dealing with trying to figure out this thing called the Cold War, they would talk about purges coming from them foreign communist governments over there, right? But you talk about the NAACP purging people. What?
Yeah, absolutely, NAACP, absolutely. Paul Robeson was too far left for the NAACP. It was interesting. This all kind of started, which really for the audience, and when we look at, because people are thinking about third parties and stuff like that. Paul Robeson and Du Bois and others, right? So in 1946, Robeson is speaking with other folk and organizing with other folk, trying to get a permanent Fair Employment Practices Committee, a permanent one, not a temporary one, permanent FEPC. And they're trying to get an anti-lynching legislation passed, which
Yes,
people have been trying since Ida B. Right?
Yes,
Ida B. Wells is the one that started it. Du Bois have been working on it, and Du Bois reminded. Well, I'll say that in a second. So they come up with something. They said we're going to meet with, we're going to go to the president with this. The NAACP was like, Walter White was like, why? We're already trying to do stuff. Why? We don't need to duplicate things. And Du Bois' response was, well, there's one organization that doesn't have a monopoly on it. There shouldn't be a problem with us going to it. But at any rate, Robeson goes to Truman, and they meet with them, the Crusade, this American Crusade Against Lynching organization. And they really kind of try to push Truman to support anti-lynching legislation. And of course, he does what presidents do at the time. He said it's the wrong time. It was the Cold War. We're dealing with other issues. This isn't the right time for that kind of legislation. Now, what Truman was worried about, and Truman was right in this sense, but he should have had the courage to do what he needed to do. Truman knew that if he did that he would lose the South.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And because the Dixiecrats come in 1948. The only reason they come then and not earlier was because of the war. Because the Southern Democrats had already gave Roosevelt hell in the 1930s. They had already been mobilizing and working with the Republicans to go against Roosevelt in the late 1930s. So there was already a problem in the Democratic Party. So Truman knew if he did the anti-lynching legislation, he would lose the South. So he was trying not to lose the South. Robeson ain't worried about that, rightfully so, right? So Robeson says, and Truman says, not worry about it. And what happens is Robeson makes a not so veiled threat. And he tells Truman, if you don't deal with these issues, Black people are going to defend themselves. And he didn't say by any means necessary, but essentially that's what he was saying.
If the government doesn't end lynching, we will. We will.
Right? And we know when we look at Kelly Carter Jackson, when we look at Akinyele Umoja, when we look at Charles Cobb, when we look at the works that they've been putting out, we know that he was right. We know that people were arming themselves. This is what? This is 13 years before Robert Williams in North Carolina, Negroes with guns.
That's right. Malcolm is still in prison.
Malcolm is still in prison.
That's right.
Right? And by the way, when Malcolm was trying to master his oratory, he used to listen to Paul Robeson records.
On the radio. That's right.
He used to listen to Paul Robeson. Right? So in many ways, all roads lead to Paul Robeson. So Robeson does that. Then Truman was like, get out. Truman is done. Right? But the thing is, Henry Wallace had already stepped out of the Truman administration. He was the Secretary of Commerce. And Henry Wallace used to be the vice president under Roosevelt, FDR. So Wallace connects with Robeson, and Robeson is helping build up now the Progressive Party.
A third party attack.
A third party alternative.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Right?
Right.
So
new conversation.
Say it again.
This ain't no new conversation, young socialists.
Yeah, it's third party. So that's how we get the Progressive Party that in 48, Du Bois and Robeson supported, that Coretta Scott King attended their national convention, and Coretta Scott King was a supporter of the Progressive Party, that Charlotta Bass was their vice presidential candidate in 1952.
People
right? So you had the Black left who were going to the Progressive Party because they didn't see what was happening about, but what Truman did, he's a master politician and stuff in many ways. Truman was pushed. Now, he didn't want to deal with Robeson and those folk, but what Truman did, he spoke in front of the NAACP.
Of course. And
started making promises. And that's when you see the Dixiecrats come, right? But you see the NAACP siding with the Truman administration, trying to get Black folk to support Truman. So by the end of the 1940s, Robeson is a pariah. That's why remember, Robeson in 1946, Robeson was making $100,000 a year.
which by our terms would be several $1 million. By our terms
Right.
today. Yeah.
Yes, and this is the thing, and we know that his art was uncompromising. Paul Robeson was clear that he wanted his art to serve, be a part of the struggle. So he wasn't with art just for art's sake. So when we saying he making $100,000, he wasn't making it by calling nobody no bees and hoes. He wasn't selling out.
That's right.
He wasn't making just music, any kind of music, just to tap dance for people to make that money. He was doing things and doing his art. He was trying to connect his art to the struggle.
There's a
and sometimes he did some things, early on that he even went back and said, I didn't like what I did in there, some of the stuff, But at any rate, he's followable just like everybody else.
Yes.
Right. So, but by the 1950s, they strip him of his passport. He goes from making $100,000 a year to $6,000 a year, and he's still uncompromising. But they got the House of Un-American Activity Committee, and it's not just one. They had a teller committee out in California that they brought him out in front of as well before they even got him to the more famous McCarthy one in the 1950s. They got Jackie Robinson to come out and say something against him. They got Manning Johnson, who used to be organizing with the communists and the socialists in the 1930s, and then he flipped and said, "I'll do whatever you want to spy on, to lie on, to do whatever." And Manning Johnson was up there at the House of Un-American Activities Committee going against Paul Robeson. And he was so bad that, even people in the government were like, let's not focus on what Manning Johnson said, because he was out.
Take a step back for a second, Kelly, because I want folks to appreciate, the nuance and the difference of the period, right? That kind of fascism was very congressionally driven. Right? Who was James McCarthy, and that cast of characters. This particular era of fascism is being driven presidentially with a base that is got a lock, trying to hold on to a lock on Congress, but it's being driven by the presidency in this one. I just wanted to put a pin in that,
and it shook things up. And again, when we and Baba Zaid and Ed, you all know, when we talk about the counterintelligence program, it spanned the whole 20th century. And we know that they were spying on everybody, and they really worked to undermine Brother Robeson. But I want to go back even to the 1930s, because 1937 he co-founds the Council on African Affairs in 1937 with Max Yergin, and Max Yergin will wind up being someone who also would flip and become an informant and try to undermine other people that he had been working with before. So, there's a few people that flipped on him. But even earlier than that, it's another point that becomes very particular for this story. 1934, when Paul Robeson goes to the Soviet Union, one of the people he meets in the Soviet Union is William Patterson.
That's right.
William Patterson tells Paul, brother, you need to, when you go back home, there's a struggle around the Scottsboro boys. You need to go back and fight for them and focus on Black causes. That's 1934, right? Remember I said Paul Robeson found himself politically in 1933. So he's moving fast. And, he would wind up later on in the 1940s with the Civil Rights Congress with William Patterson.
Who in 1951 would actually file.
We charged genocide.
That's right.
We charged genocide. And Paul Robeson went with the delegation to the United Nations and handed them the book, We Charge Genocide, 1951. While his passport had been stripped, while he was getting all this heat, Paul Robeson didn't take one step back. I'm a punk. When I think about Paul Robeson, I'm a punk. When I think about what he put on the line and what he did, I'm a pump.
Me too.
So and we don't lift him up enough, because what happens is Paul Robeson does all that and the movement moves away from him.
Yes.
The boys and Alphaeus Hutton, they stuck with him, and Patterson stuck with him. But the movement, as the movement comes, they distance themselves from Brother Robeson.
Yeah, the so-called race men and women. Yes, sir. Paul, and I
Yeah,
like it.
we dissing themselves. And
I know we gotta wind down. I see Marquis is ready to jump in and whatnot. Now, Ed, you and I grew up on the great Muhammad Ali, and Muhammad Ali, as a young Cassius Clay was ascending in popularity, becomes Muhammad Ali to become one of the most hated, holds the line on his principles, and becomes the most popular man in the world. Right? There's a similar parallel with Paul Robeson. As a people's artist, using our folk traditions, elevating that to the significance of high classical art, right? And tying that with the other folk arts of the world in all of those languages, and including 8 African languages, became the most popular black man in the world in his time, before that hardcore Cold War shift in the mid to late 1940s, and wound up being the most hated in the country, but internationally he was beloved as he ever was. I just wanted to put a pin in that. Now, as we wind down, if you wanted to, this talk, teacher man, if you wanted to put some books, some places to go and research and whatnot on Paul Robeson, what would you tell young activists, young socialists, young radicals, young wannabes, struggle to look at it to get a good handle on this man? I put some things in the chat, but we want to hear from the great Kelly Harris.
well, I think you were right to put Gerald Horn's work in the chat. I think Martin Duberman's work on biography on Paul Robeson is still a seminal piece and a very important piece to read. I think if you can find Here I Stand is a very important piece to read. His wife wrote a biography on Paul Robeson, which is hard to find now, but that's worthwhile. But his son, Paul Robeson Jr., did 2 volumes on Paul Robeson, on Paul Robeson's life. So I think those are good grist for folk to really wrestle with Paul Robeson. But remember, go back and look at the Progressive Party. Go back and look at the challenge to the Democratic Party at that time, and the politics around those issues, because I think it's very instructive for what we deal with now, and then even trying to build a third party at the national level and at the local level. So we have to really be honest about it and wrestle with it and see the challenges, because I think there's similar things that happen then that we see now.
And to emphasize your point, that particular moment made the duopoly quite nervous.
Absolutely.
As there were some real forces that were doing some real mass organizing, and there were a lot of folks who were feeling that vibration. I want to lift up in her book, The Whole World in His Hands, Susan Robeson, right? His granddaughter, who used to be a producer for the late Gil Noble. She did a pictorial biography, and if you can find that, it's a great piece too. And that's a before you take the dive into the hardcore scholarship that you just lifted up. But yeah, the man was huge.
Absolutely.
He needs to be studied and he needs to be appreciated. Ed, you want to say anything? Ed, you want to say any closing remarks as we transition out? And Kelly, I appreciate you because we got you on short notice too. I really appreciate you jumping.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime, man. I love y'all, man. Anytime.
We love you back.
I mean, right back at you, brother. We love you. I think that, without a doubt, man, we need to definitely give a little bit more time to Paul Robeson, because, we're still in that phase of trying to create a third political party. And I think that all of the people who try to do that, I think that, for some reason, man, there's this stronghold on certain brothers and sisters amongst us that just won't let us move to that point. I mean, even, today as they celebrate the homegoing of Bob Law, I can remember Bob Law and the brother who was the councilman in Brooklyn. I forget his name, Brother Zaid. I draw a blank right now. But, I remember when they got together and they were trying to create a third black political party, and black folks were pushing back on it. Charles Barron. Yeah, him and Charles Barron. And, and so to hear that history, we need to go back and really have a conversation about that. And I think that I'm going to tell you something. I really believe, Brother Harris, that's where our power is going to lie. When black folk can separate themselves and vote as a voting bloc, right? Because the truth is, what makes Trump powerful is the fact that he keep pushing this mega group, right? He keep, all of these people are afraid because he got this one voting block that, allows him to just do and say outrageous things. And all of these Republicans in the Congress and in the Senate are afraid of how they're going to move. So imagine that kind of information that our brother had back then. We need to go back and examine that, man.
Well, you know what? And the last thing I'm going to say, Paul Robeson in this Progressive Party. One of the things, though, that's very instructive, even when he was out stumping for Wallace in the Progressive Party, he still was hitting up Truman for meetings to try to push him to do what needs to be done.
Right.
So he didn't put all his eggs in one basket.
Right.
But he was using the Progressive Party, too, to say, let me see what kind of concessions I can win from y'all, put pressure on y'all. So it was very, and one could argue that, certain things that happened, maybe Brown v. Board, Derek Bell argues, there's reasons for that decision came when it did. But one could argue that one piece of it might have been that the Democratic Party knew they needed to do something to try to win the heart and minds of Black people, not only from the Soviet Union, but also from going to organizations like the Progressive Party, because a lot of us did vote for Progressive Party in 1948 and 1952.
Kelly, what turned you on to Paul Robeson?
What turned me on back in the day?
Mm-hmm.
It was his this Duberman biography.
Okay.
I remember reading it as a young person, man. That and I hadn't really known about him, man. That turned me out.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, this guy is unbelievable. It's certain people's lives that when you learn about them, you read about what they've done, it almost sounds fictional.
Yeah.
Like Harriet Tubman, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds fictional. Yeah. So, and Paul Robeson's another one of them cats. Du Bois is one of them cats. It sounds fictional to do what they did. And some people, and we can go on down the line in our freedom struggle, what people have done, not just sounds fictional what they were able to accomplish.
Right on. I want to lift up my friend and comrade, Tony Montero. And I was trying to pull that out of Jian, right? When he was talking, because Tony set up that W.E.B. Du Bois Saturday school in Philly, and he was a little too left even for Africana studies at Temple, right? And that's a different kind of conversation that we need to be able to have too.
Is. That's an interesting conversation. Yeah. For
real. All right, and ask him the ritual question. I know we took up some of Marquis's time.
Yep. So what you listening to right now, Brother Kelly?
Oh, it's interesting. Because brother, what I listened to, Brother Akbar had passed, and I saw an interview with Chuck D was talking about what he meant to him. And that just made me turn on some PE and listen to that. But it's interesting too, and it's not listened to in terms of music too, but one of the things in terms of hip hop that I'm checked in on and that we need to wrestle with is what the death of Africa Bambaataa means.
That's right.
For the culture. So it's some stuff that hip hop has to deal with. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Hip hop is going to mature. They got to be able to have these conversations. Absolutely.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're gonna have that conversation the last 30 minutes of the night. So if you're around, pop back in, man, because it's gonna get a little heated, man. Because some people feel some type of way.
Yeah, let me see if my wife let me back on later.
Yeah.
All right, y'all.
All right, brother.
Jonathan.
Hey, man, how are you? Hello.
There you go.
Hello.
Yeah, we hear you. Go ahead. You got it, John.
Okay, all right. Marquis is on right now. I thought he was actually already on.
Hey,
man, how are you?
How y'all doing, fellas?
There you go.
Good.
What's good, Mark?
What's going on? Just another day.
Hey, man. So,
Grandpa used to say, just another day above ground.
So it's cool. It's really cool to have you on, and you're on our show a lot. But this time, you're on our show not just because you're doing a really cool program tomorrow. You're also on as a candidate for Essex County Freeholder. I'm not Freeholder. Essex County Commissioner.
Commissioner now, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's someone else in the background. The name Jian. Is that
No.
one of your people?
Take himself out. Yeah,
Okay.
he was on the first segment. That's Jian.
Okay, cool. All right. So,
Yeah.
so let's just start at you being a candidate. I know we don't have much time because we have a hard stop at 7:30. But the first thing I want to do is to talk to you about the race. Right? You have decided you have not run for political office since, I don't know, for Board of Education. What made you decide to run? And tell us about yourself, biography for people who don't know. Why should you be the next county commissioner or one of the next county commissioners?
Hello?
Hello?
Hear you.
Did you hear the question?
No, I said I heard you haven't ran for political office. We cut
Yep.
out.
And so, I mean, you didn't run for political office for a while. So why right now are you running for the commissioner for Essex County? And what is there about your biography? Tell us about your biography for people who don't know. What about your biography makes you a good candidate for commissioner?
Well, I haven't, like you said, Jonathan, I haven't ran for office in the last 8 years since I left the school board. And, the reason why I decided to run for commissioner, because we need some new energy in Essex County. We need someone who is going to be results driven, who understands policy and procedures, and also bring transparency. The residents around Essex County, as I go around and I knock on doors and I meet the residents who don't know me and introduce myself, their main question is, what is a commissioner? What is your role and responsibility? What are they doing with the money that they're responsible for? Why are we as minorities, black and brown people, are 1% of the people who are receiving the benefits from the county when it comes to being people with contracts, right? So the reason why I decided to run is because we need someone who's going to be accessible, who's going to be accountable, and who's going to make sure that they represent every part of Essex County. 22 municipalities need representation. The same reason why I ran for school board in 2009 was because there were people that was not being heard, that needed a voice and needed somebody to speak on their behalf when they're not in the room, and go out and make negotiations that benefit every person, not people who have a connection to folks, but someone who's going to advocate for every resident who need a voice on that board. So that's why we decided to run for this position. I say we is because it's a team of us, right? I can't do it without my team. I can't do it with everyone because I'm not the smartest person in the room, right? But I have to understand where to go get the answers when I don't know things.
Now, there's some stuff that you've done. Go into your biography. There's some stuff that you've added to your biography lately in the last few years, like after you left the school board. Is there anything you've done that's significant that you might want to share with your audience as well?
Well, I became a coach, coaching young people in the city. I became a mentor. I served on the parking authority in the city of Newark as the secretary, and then moved my way up to being the chairman of the board, which helped make sure that our residents understood that they had someone when it came to violations, that they had someone who they could contact, who could advocate on behalf, but also the employees understood that they had a board member who understood what they did out there on the street on the daily. Because I once was them, right? I once was a ticket writer in the city. I worked for the agency, and then I became a board member, and understood that the challenges that they faced, right? Also became a youth pastor in that time. So I'm a youth pastor. I'm a coach. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm a many of things in this city. I've always advocated, and I've been behind the scenes for the last 8 years, and I'm humble to be a part of the Baraka administration because I've seen firsthand of the great things that we're doing in this city. And as someone who was born and raised and educated here, I saw where we were, and I said we were where we are today. And I want to bring that same energy to Essex County.
Right on.
Okay. And also, have you done some educational things within that time as well? I just remember
Yes,
seeing some stuff on your Facebook page.
yes, yes. I also went to seminary school, and I also got my honorary a doctorate degree in humanity for all the community service that I've been doing over the years. I've been out here since I was 16 years old. I think people forget that a lot, Jonathan, that I've been out here since I was in high school. I was 16 years old out here advocating for residents in this city, and I haven't missed a beat. I've been like a drum line. I've been drumming ever since I was 16. I never forgot where I came from, and I always been focused on making change in my community, in this city, in the county, in the state. And that's why, uh, I was so successful when the mayor tapped me to run his Irvington operation, because I was able to deliver the message, right? That we need someone who that we can touch, that we can speak with, that we got a conversation with, and have the same mindset of us, that is about all of us, not just
And
some
when you're
of us.
talking about the mayor's Irvington operation, are you talking about Mayor Baraka when he was running for governor?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I ran the Irvington operation for him when he ran for governor, which was very successful.
Okay. And so you also are a coach, right?
Yeah.
You are also involved with athletics. You are also involved with bringing kids or adults now back to the community. You work closely with Tahir Whitehead. You've had him on our show multiple times before. NFL superstar, retired NFL superstar, and someone who is from our community. And he has done a lot of work with you in the past. And I believe there is an event tomorrow that is going on. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So, Ty, my grandfather always told me that you have to surround yourself with people you want to be like. If you hang around people that's losers, you become losers. If you hang around with people who want to be successful, you become successful. And I am honored, that Tahir Whitehead, who is a retired NFL football player who a graduate of Westside High School, Temple University, who was drafted in 2012, never forgot where he came from. The moment Tahir got drafted to the NFL, until even today, he have tirelessly poured into the city, poured into young people, whether it's been in Pot One of football, high school, sports, uh, community give back. When it came to turkey give backs, holiday give backs, even if it comes to a family been burned out and they need help. Tahir Whitehead have been here, even though he been traveling around the world in the NFL. He never forgot where he came from, and that what drive me to love him like a brother. Blood can make us no closer. And the mayor uh, bought into this idea, and I'm grateful that the mayor and the my director Donnell Redding, and the entire city and the council bought into the idea of we have to give people flowers while they could smell them. We have to uplift our people, especially the ones that don't forget about the community that helped raise them. So on tomorrow, the mayor is doing something amazing, something magnificent, and something that's going to be in the history books, a naming a field after someone who was born, raised, and educated here, Tahir Whitehead, at Nat Turner Park. It will be named the Tahir Whitehead Sports Complex at Nat Turner Park in his honor,
Nice.
and we will have the entire Pot Warner football organization, high school football organizations around the city, parents, coaches, and everyone who are going to witness this day. Make this a remarkable day that we all can remember, because we are naming something after someone who's alive, who's active, who children could touch and can be inspired by. I tell people all the time the
That's
reason why we can't get our city alive. We get alive by giving naming buildings. Buildings are dead because they named after dead people. But when we name it after people that are alive, we can see the energy that it brings to young people across the city.
I think that's excellent, right? Because Tahir Whitehead was not just a phenomenal athlete. I believe he played in a Super Bowl. I believe that he was an incredible NFL player. Made us proud every time he walked out on the field. And he also is someone who always consistently gave back. He consistently runs different programs to teach other kids in high school to do the stuff that he did, and techniques. So I think that him constantly giving back, him being an excellent role model in the community, I think that's really great, because a lot of people who come from Newark end up giving back to Newark. And no matter where they go or what they do, they end up giving back here. So I think that's great what's going on
Absolutely.
tomorrow. I have one other question for you as a candidate. Switching back to the candidate thing.
Yeah.
Question that I'm asking for everyone. We had this incident at History High School a couple of years back. It brought forth certain tensions between Blacks and Latinos inside of Newark. I'm asking really all the candidates about things that they are doing to make. What are you doing anything to bring our community together to recognize that? Do you think that these things are issues? And if so, just to talk on it. Is that tension, racial tension, ethnic tension within our community, is it a thing? And if it is, what are you doing as a candidate, because you represent everyone, to bring our community together?
Well, I believe division is people's agenda, because division creates confusion, and confusion creates mess, right? So I believe that myself and my team, Mayor Barack, we always been about bringing people together, because unity. It's all about teamwork. I tell my players all the time, it's team, right? Together, everyone achieve more. So as long as we together, we can achieve great things. We can't be successful in division, because division create cracks for the enemy to get in between, right? So what we do, even in my daily work that I do as in the city, we have events across the city where we bring people together and we acknowledge, everyone's culture, right? Even when I was on the school board, we made sure that everyone understood that the Amistad Act needed to be in place, because our children need to know who they are. It's about this mental mindset. If they don't know who they are, they can't appreciate the sacrifice of other people, right? And the reason why the city can't be divided, while we can afford to be divided, because we are reminded of the sacrifice of our ancestors. 1967 showed us that we ought to be together. And then the Black and Puerto Rican Convention brought us together. And the only people that don't want us to be together is the people that have agendas because of self-gain, right? And when we have a collective unity agenda, that's when we understand that we have to be together.
Okay, so I know that we have a hard stop at 7:30, and I know that we're running out of time on this, but two things. First, it's great to have you back on our show. It's great to have you
Absolutely.
back on our show as a candidate. Normally, we have you on, you're introducing us to someone. You
Yeah.
have been a friend of our show, like openly, like you've been a friend of our show
Yes,
pretty
sir.
much since our show started. So I
Yes.
just want to shout you out. Appreciation for that. And thanks for
Yeah,
answering,
I just want
the
to say,
different questions that we asked
Jonathan.
the candidates.
I just want to say, Jonathan, I appreciate you guys. Y'all basically raised me. These my community uncles. Y'all knew me since I was 16 years old. Y'all know the work. So
That's
I'm not
very
selling
true.
myself to you guys, because y'all know who I am. You know, um, but for everyone that's out there, there's been a lot of social media, people try to do social media talk. I don't compliment on social media, but people say many of things that ain't true. Some people that haven't even had a conversation with me call me illiterate and all types of things, special needs. But I just want the people out there to understand that yes, Marquis Quill Lewis do have special needs. My special needs is on June 2nd. I need everybody to come out and vote for me, because I'm about change and new energy that's coming to Essex County. So yes, I have special needs. Call your family members up and tell them that I'm on the ballot. New energy is on the ballot.
Okay, and you also did speech in Newark, right? You were a
Yeah,
speech and debate person.
Speech and debate, original oratory, dramatic interpretation, and poet. In the city, and because of great people like you, I became a city champion, champion, and also a national finalist under your tutelage and my great coach, Halim Suleiman.
Halim Suleiman was amazing. Arts
Yes,
High
yes,
School. Yeah, I remember. I
exactly,
actually
yes.
remember some of the pieces you
Spirit and the
did.
lyric is
I
basically
didn't connect you to speech and debate until you mentioned it because you got the
Mhm.
beard and mustache now. But when you mentioned it, I was like, nice. All right. But
That's
we have
right.
a. All right. Well, thank you very much, man, and we will talk to you soon. We'll probably have you back on before the election.
But Jonathan, let me just say that Marquis is absolutely correct. We've known him since he was 16. Isn't
Yeah.
that? And
That
That's
now,
is.
right.
and now he's 23.
Yep. Yep. All right. So, right. 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 All right. Well, we will talk to you later, man.
All right,
Uh,
Mark.
Thank, thank you for having me.
Yep, yep.
thank you for being on. Thank you for being on. We
and
appreciate
I wish I could make math work for me like that.
Yeah, right.
you. All right, so we are here in time for our next guest. Our net we started off with in the very beginning of the show
He's really
talking
there.
about yes,
Golly gee.
talking about Mumia Abu Jamal, right? An actual political prisoner in the United States, and that the United States has many. And I think the reason why we talk about Mumia in the beginning of the show is to have an understanding of what the United States federal government can do. And there's no one who really knows what it can still do and the type of damage that the federal government can do at a federal level. Then our next guest and a friend, and again, a very good friend of our show, our Congresswoman from the 10th District, LaMonica McIver, who is literally facing trumped up charges from the United States Justice Department. I said at the time when it first happened that this would be one of the most important cases for us to look at because it would set the precedent and the tone for all the other stuff that happened since. Welcome to our show. Tell
What's
us how
that?
are you doing and give us some updates as to where we are now.
Hey everybody, it's good to see you all. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Jesus.
Um I'm doing good. It's been a crazy battle, and everything going on with the case. We are currently waiting on a court date at this moment to go before the Third Circuit appellate court to basically ask for the charges to be dropped. The briefs were due this past week, and the other side briefs are due, and amicus briefs have been filed, and so we're going through the process, and hoping to be in front of a judge, later spring, late spring, early summer, arguing this case in front of that court. So we're in the second stretch of this fight. It's been crazy, but when you're up against this government, and up against this president and this administration, which we've seen all of the crazy things, that they have been doing and cruel things, it's kind of what you can expect. And so, still, in the fight, and praying that we come out of this thing successful.
You're muted, Jonathan.
You muted.
What is the next date that we need to be aware of, or do you have that yet?
So we don't have a date yet for us that will be back in front of the judge yet. We're, with all of the briefs and the, basically the protocol of the court going on right now, we have to wait until that's finished before we get a new date.
Okay. So right now it's wait and see.
Correct. It's a waiting period until we're back in front of the court.
Now there's a recent New York Times article that you were featured in. I thought it was very positive in terms of just talking about the scope of what's going on, and there were some things I actually didn't know that you actually have to raise a lot of your own money for legal fees. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, so members of Congress are not able to take pro bono legal help. Actually, it's against ethics rules, and so no one can offer us free pro bono help. So you actually have to go out and get a lawyer to defend yourself. And so we had to get a lawyer, which my lawyer is Paul Fishman, who was the former U.S. attorney here in New Jersey, and he's with Arnold and Porter. So that is our law firm that we're dealing with. And so it costs. Either you're paying for this person personally, or you're raising dollars to pay for it. I mean, I'm not a millionaire. You know, many people in Congress are, but I'm not one of those members. And so I have to raise dollars to fight this case. You know, so far we've probably spent over $500,000 on legal fees, and we probably looking
Mm.
at another 500 to $600,000 on this case, because it can cost up into $1 million, the case alone itself. So it's really stressful. I mean, at the end of the day, that's a part of the, punishment. That's really what it's about. I
Right.
always say that this whole thing, the Trump administration really doesn't care sometimes about the actual outcome. Really, it's about the process, and the process itself is the punishment. That's the process is the pain and the punishment. And so, when you have to worry about raising dollars to defend yourself and to, make sure that these people cannot throw you in jail, at the same time, you have to raise dollars from campaign. We're in election year, election is
Right.
June 2nd. You have to do both. Really, that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to break you down, limit your resources. And that's what we've been going through, almost a year now as we approach, May coming up again. So it's been, it's been stressful. That process itself has been stressful because it's hard for Black women in elected office to raise money
Hmm.
anyway. But then when you have to double up, legal fees, it's even more difficult. And a lot of people, like, sometimes I hear commentary where it's like, oh, you're crying now because you have to raise money, but it's like they're using the government, they're using your tax dollars to do this to
Right.
me. Like, I mean, literally, like, they have no worry in the world because you're paying for them to basically prosecute me and try to throw me in jail for 17 years.
It's interesting because when I was in college, I read the book Agents of Repression by Churchill and I think Vanderbilt, right? And it was really just a collection of freedom of information documents on COINTELPRO, the United States counterintelligence agency, that counterintelligence program that was run out of the FBI and used local police enforcement. One of the tactics they used against protesters, against Black Panthers, against people who they did not like, anti-war protesters, were to trump up charges against them. And what they wrote, like these are from FBI documents. What they wrote at the time was that it wasn't about getting a conviction. It was about forcing them to pay for a lawyer. It was about the psychological stress that it would cause to their life. And it seems like this is the tactic that they started using with you and that they are extending to other people, or they started to extend to other people after you. And it's wild because many of the people after you ended up catching breaks and those cases broke down. Whereas your trumped up case, and for anyone reading about it, it is a ridiculous trumped up case where they had to throw the case out against the mayor because they were literally lying. But it seems like the person who called for the arrest of the mayor is now in charge of the Justice Department.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Correct.
So
Jonathan,
the person,
let me just add something, Jonathan, because I don't, and I appreciate how you laid that question out, but I've spent almost 40 years trying to get people out of prison who have been framed by this government, right? And while one of their frontal tactics is to drain them, as you indicated, but do not think that they're not serious about trying to win convictions and put people in prison,
Yeah,
because
no.
they
right,
are. We need to be real
Yeah,
clear.
no. Oh no, they're very serious about
right.
that. I mean,
And a lot of
correct. But I think the number one thing too, like a lot of times we see, especially we've seen with this president, they're doing a lot of things that they necessarily know that they can do sometimes, but they still do them. Like they still push the line, is what I mean. And so when they're doing that on different cases and different fronts, sometimes it's draining states, it's draining organizations and fighting them. And they really take joy in that, right? They love that. And I think that's a part of their agenda of how they operate. But I don't want to take away that if they can get me in jail for 17 years or any time, they would be
Right.
rejoicing, honey. They would have them a whole barbecue, and celebrate, because that would be right up their alley. Because once again, I always try to make people understand, like, this is just not about LaMonica McIver. This case is bigger than me. And that's one of the things, like, that the New York Times piece and many other folks' piece lays out. It really speaks to members of Congress ability to conduct oversight. And if they can get away with doing this to me and stopping me from having oversight by, pushing these charges, then basically it limits the powers of Congress and what they're able to do in oversight, but also holding the executive branch accountable. And that's problematic. And that's right up Trump's alley, of how he likes it, because this is someone who wants to operate without accountability, who wants to operate without any rules or regulations. And so, if they can get away with this, it's going to be very crazy and really questions the ability of what Congress is able to do.
I love the way that you put that in context of what they are trying to stop you from doing your job. Because, as with many Black women who get involved in activism and get involved with Congress, you're not doing this just to help our own community, right? You were doing this to really push for oversight against immigrants who are being abused by, like, people who couldn't vote for you, right? Couldn't vote for you anyway. But you were putting your body on the line to do oversight on the abuses that are taking place in these detention centers. We are hearing human rights abuse after human rights abuse after human rights abuse that are taking place in these sentences, in these private prisons, even leading to some people dying. Can you
Yeah.
talk to us about the reason why they targeted you and what is going on with that and that type of oversight?
Yeah, well, I think, Jonathan, it's actually about oversight in general, right? I mean, look, it started with me about the detention center, but then we saw multiple other members trying to go to detention centers. We saw members get on the video and tell, military service people not to take illegal orders. And look, they went after them. Like, they had to get a lawyer. All of these different things, I think it's about oversight, period. No matter if we're talking about over the ICE detention centers or anything else, that is their problem. Like, they do not want, other people who do not agree with their agenda, who are not on their team or even on their team, to question anything or oversee anything that they do. And I think, like, me being the first person up on this target, right? I think they're just going on pushing forward and using me as an example. And I think to some point it's worked in their case, because some members are scared. They're like, look, I don't want to get into, I don't want to make the personal sacrifice to get up and protect people or, put myself out there, because one, I don't want to be facing charges. Two, I don't want to be having to raise dollars to get a lawyer. I don't have the dollars to do it. And then you have some that have done the total opposite. They're like, look, hey, they're trying to stop oversight. Well, let us step up and do more oversight, get out there, see what's going on, and have continued to be the resistance and push back against this administration. But at the end of the day, that's the overall arching point, is that this president and this administration does not want to be questioned. They do not want to be held accountable. They want to do everything that they want to do, and they don't want anybody to question them and don't think they have to answer to anybody. I mean, for God's sakes, they killed two white people in broad daylight in front of the entire world, and
That's
then said that they were terroristic, terrorists or terroristic, terrorists or domestic terrorists is what they said. I mean, and literally tried to make us believe that it was something else. Like, this is what they're doing. They don't care who gets in the way of it. They want to make sure that they're pushing their agenda, getting the things done that they want to get done, and they don't want anybody getting in their way. And if you get in their way, trust and believe they're going to do everything that they can to come after you. That's how I feel like Republicans are scared. Like, I have so many Republican colleagues who come up to me and they're like, yo, that's crazy. These charges are crazy. Like, they'll say that to me. And I'm like, yeah, all of this is crazy. Like, why don't you guys say something publicly? Like, why are you guys not pushing back? And they're so afraid. Like, they're like, no, I can't say anything because I'll get killed, or this will happen to me. And it's just like, people don't have the political courage they need, in this moment. Some people do, some people don't. But the majority you see from an entire Republican Party, you got, like, out of 200 and something members, you got maybe 2 to 3 members who feel comfortable with speaking out. That's crazy.
What you mentioned, I think, is super important. You say that you actually talk to Republicans, like, you're a congressperson, right? You talk to other Republicans in Congress who agree with you. They
Don't
think
try
it's
to save
crazy.
this off the record.
Absolutely, yeah.
What are they scared of? Like, are they just scared that people won't vote for them? You mentioned are there physical threats and intimidation? What are the Republicans who you talk to scared of?
I
Hey,
mean,
John,
they're scared. They're
hey,
scared
John,
of Trump, is what they're
let's
scared
remember
of.
that woman got got a hard stop at 7:45. So let's let this be her last question.
So I just want to say, like, they are scared of Trump. Like, I mean, they are terrified. I mean, one, they're terrified that he'll get on Truth Social and call them out, and then they'll start to get all of this hate mail. I mean, they should take a moment to visit my inbox, to help better them the way they're feeling about it. But at the end of the day, like, they're scared of that, like, right? And I think that Trump has made some examples out of some Republicans where they have, they'll speak out and say, hey, this is wrong. But then literally, he'll come after them, and then they'll get threats, and their families will get threats according to them, and they feel unsafe. And then he'll start trying to, get another Republican candidate to run against them in their district. So I think it's a host of those things, but specifically they're scared of Trump and the MAGA movement that has basically taken over the Republican Party.
Hmm. That is wild. Is there anything else that you'd like us to know? I know you have a hard stop here, so we're just going to give you the final words for this. Is there anything else that you want to tell us about what's going on, dates or things that we should do or can do to help?
Well, I mean, one, I just want to thank you all always. I mean, just for using your platform, one, to continue to lift up the case. We've been doing, you all know this because I've been running like crazy to make sure, number one, I'm doing my job and representing the people of the 10th Congressional District, still standing up to protect them no matter what, still delivering dollars, back to the district. We were, even through all of this madness, we were able to deliver over $10 million for community projects here in New Jersey's 10th Congressional District. We were able to get over $90 million in federal dollars in addition to community project work. And so we've still been working, still been moving, still doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I just want to thank you all for lifting what has happened to me up, right? There's been so much cruelty and chaos and so much happening with this administration that sometimes my story is getting drowned out along with many other stories, right? As they continue to do things each and every day. So we just keep trying to remind people, I have people coming to me sometimes, they're like, man, I'm so happy you got through that. They tried to come at you. I'm like, got through it. Like, no, we're still in this fight of it, but people just don't know what is going on sometimes. So I just want to thank you all for, number one, lifting my story up and continue to talk about it and giving me the opportunity to come up here and talk about it. But also, too, I just want to thank you all for every Friday to continue to educate the listeners and educate the people who tune in about what is happening in politics. I think in this moment, which we've talked about for so many years, people are so drowned out from what is happening. But even more so now today, people are exhausted, right? They're just like so disconnected. But it's like at the end of the day, we do not have time to go to sleep in this moment. Like, we have to, re-energize, get refocused, and really get engaged and informed, especially as we approach the midterm elections that are coming up. Some of them already happened. New Jersey's is happening in June, and then there'll be the general primary, which will be in the general election, which will be in November. And I think people really need to pay attention what's happening and really be engaged, because this is our one single moment to be able to try to do something about this president and this administration if we can flip the House in November.
Thank you so much, and thank you for making time. We know that you have a very busy schedule, and we are absolutely respecting that. But you're welcome to come back anytime, and we're going to try to get you to come back more often to keep this at the forefront of people's minds.
I promise I'll be back soon.
All right, take care.
All right, see you guys.
All right, cool. So that was a powerful segment, and I think it went in well with both our past segment in terms of the Mumia. Like, a lot of people don't even know who Mumia is now, right? And I think that's part of the challenge.
Mumia and Paul Robeson.
Right, Paul Robeson section 2.
There's a line that runs. There's a straight line of connection that runs right through all three sessions.
Mm-hmm. That's fair, right? Because Paul Robeson was also blacklisted on trumped-up charges, et cetera. And I think this goes into our next segment as well. Apparently, Republicans in New Jersey are playing a very, very ruthless game in terms of school funding. They were accusing the superintendent of mishandling money, waste, and mismanagement, and fraud, right? Like, they were using these terms, and they were pushing for a federal investigation of that. So in our next segment, we're going to be talking to the superintendent of Newark Public Schools, Roger León, about that. He was recently on Fox News trying to pushing the truth of the narrative against these claims that are coming and very politically tense times. So just the way in which the Republicans seem to be, the Trump administration seems to be using the federal government to persecute by prosecute, to do persecution by prosecution, and these things have to be taken seriously.
Did we talk about next Thursday? So by this time next week, we will know who will be filling the seat of the 11th congressional district, because that election is next Thursday.
We did not talk about that.
Mhm.
I did not know that that district was next Thursday, and that is
Yes.
simply the Republican and Democrat
Yes.
going at each other. It is expected to be the Democrat seat because it was Mickey Sherrill's seat, and
Yes.
Mejia. What is Mejia's first name again?
Analia.
Analia Mejia is running
Mhm.
for that seat. She's been on our program a few times, and
Mhm.
we will hopefully have her back as a sitting congresswoman.
Yes.
Uh,
And we need all of those seats filled.
But you know, Jonathan, I just want to correct something that you just said, just so that people are clear. Paul Robeson wasn't anything black done to him. It was white folks who were clearly trying to stop everything he was doing. So we don't have the ability to blacklist folks, white folks, or white listing black folks. I mean, I heard Joy Reid talk about how everybody that was removed off of NBC, and I didn't know this, were basically all black women. I didn't know that. That they were literally, all of them were fired from their jobs with MSNBC. And it was
real animus towards black women and anything loosely
Right
related
now,
to them.
yeah, I didn't know that. I heard her talk about it. So, and she
I
was
didn't see that on MSNBC. Like, can you repeat that?
Yeah, she said, you know, she was talking about all of the black women who literally got fired. They weren't given the opportunity to leave. They literally got fired because they pro-black agendas.
And this is there a timing for this? They're talking about, was this post-election? Was this pre-election? Like what
In the
was
wake of
the
the
context?
wake of the DEI, right?
Right. It started with Melissa Harris Perry, if y'all remember.
Right, which was 4 years ago.
That's right. So it started with her, and that was before this whole DEI thing came apart. But it was strong black women who were on MSNBC, and so she was making a point.
Series of them, right?
Yeah, she was making a point that it was no blacklisting. It was all whitelisted. People who were making those decisions were afraid of the kind of conversations that black women were having. Not necessarily black men on that network, but black women. And
Well, there weren't many black men on the network, right? Like in a lot of these conversations, it's like there usually are only black women by and large. There may be one. I think there was only one black man on that was a host on MSNBC. But usually it's not, because there at some point should be a talk about the levels of exclusion that are there as well. But we could definitely talk about and should talk about both at the same time. The black women who were there were made to disappear. The black men were never really there, right? To begin with. And those are things that we should recognize, that these things that how these patterns work within our community, right? Like as in corporate America, often black men are not there, and to begin with, in terms of college education, higher education, etc. And now with the attacks on DI, the black women who were benefiting from like just freedom and openness, right? Just in terms of not being included, are now being actively excluded. And these are some phenomenal people who are just being actively excluded. Then I think that is an important part of the conversation as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that, but I think that we want to be clear what was done to these sisters, because no one is, and I got to give Joy Reid credit for really telling their story, right? Because and she said it. She said that if we don't tell our own story, with the very Black people who were there or afraid to even tell that story, that they were fired. And they were fired not because, and we all know Joy Reid graduated from Harvard. We know that she graduated top of her class. So it wasn't a matter of her skills or her ability. And it was the same with Melissa Harris Perry, right? And so when you look at all of these super intelligent Black women, they go and you know, I mean, the thing is that we don't even hear from Melissa Harris Perry anymore, right? And that's the real goal, to try and bury these women. And I think that we need to begin to celebrate those sisters who were at MSNBC and the work that they did on behalf of the community.
Now, Melissa Harris Perry, was it a kind of undermining of Reverend Sharpton, kind of?
I don't think I want to talk about that.
Okay, all right.
There was because she made some statements about that herself. Y'all could probably go Google that, and I would rather let Melissa Harris Perry's statements be her statements, and I not have any statements as it relates to Reverend Sharpton and his part of his relationship in that matter, because he was there. But I think with that, with what she said, that it was not Black people blackballing her, but it was the white people at that who had the power, and it was a Black woman who was in charge, but it was the white folks who basically whiteballed all of them sisters, and it was just because of the stance that they were taking on behalf of Black people. I mean, I remember Mr. Harris Perry used to play hip hop music when she came on, and they said that the powers that be had problems with that.
Yeah. MSNBC is a beachhead for the Democratic Party.
That's true.
That is very telling about the state of affairs of the Black presence in the Democratic Party. And Black folks need to stop being so apologetic and nonchalant about, the degrading of the value of their collective vote and their collective presence and their respective presence as contributors to that. If there's going to be any respect within the Democratic Party, that's, I'm gonna pray for you, Democrats.
Right, and Zai, don't act like you don't vote Democratic most of the time.
I ain't no damn.
I'm just saying, when it comes down to it, right? But I do think that you're right in terms of people who are within the power structure. It is a constant fight. And what I always say about elections, I have a good friend who told me today that he doesn't vote, doesn't believe in elections. KRS-One apparently does not believe in voting, right? But I always say to my friends who are not voting and aren't voters, is that you're looking at voting all wrong. You've got to vote for the person you'd most rather fight. There has to be a recognition that just because someone is in office doesn't mean you don't have to fight them, right? Like there are politicians who I like, I'm going to have to fight over certain things, right? We're going to have to always do that with the politicians that we elect. We have to fight them because we'd rather fight them than fight other people. But fight you will need to have. I think that as a segue into our next segment, part of the next segment, we're going to have a conversation about charter schools, the charter movement, and their influence over local politicians, and the way in which we really have to understand that there is a charter influence that is trying to influence politics, that is trying to influence politicians in terms of who they give money to, who they support. And it's been that way. Like those of us in the Newark Public School District knew that based on when Cammie Anderson was here under Chris Christie, and the destructive influence that charter school money and that charter school influence has.
Very intentional.
Right. So, and I think we need to understand what local control means and what this narrative that they try to put on Newark Public Schools is, right? What it's really about, especially given the advances that have been made in there. I think this is a good time to bring on our next guest.
I think, hey, John, let me just say this, John, before you bring on the superintendent. You're right. I want to use the mayor's language when he says, I know you said we're going to have to fight. I like the mayor's language when he said that we're going to have to push certain politicians. We're going to have to push them, right?
Right. And push, fight, right.
And Milani.
But and even have an understanding that those people that were pushing, fighting, cajoling, right, twisting their arm back, right, like there are all kind of things we have to do with the people that we vote for, because it doesn't stop when you vote for them. It has to be a continuing process of pushing them, and to the point where if they push back too hard and they just are like kick rocks, die in the street, then you got to find somebody else. But it's never about just not being in the process. It's about understanding the process is a constant fight.
I understand exactly what you're saying. I just want to be clear that I think that when we use those kind of words in our community, fight, people take that to a whole nother level. We don't mean that in a sense of violence. We mean it in the sense.
Oh no, not violence at all. Right.
Pushing
violence.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like political fights.
Right, because we got people in this current election who, what's going on in Newark, and I've heard Mitty say this. We've got people who are saying things that are downright to the point where you want to take off your jacket, because I don't think you understand. I'm from Clinton Avenue and 10th Street, man. So what we're saying is we're talking about pushing people, pushing ideas, right? Pushing those things that we believe in. We want to push those people like we do with the superintendent. He come on, we're gonna push him too, right?
Right.
Using your words.
We thank God that he's from Newark, that he can push us back.
Yes, absolutely.
I want in on this conversation.
and superintendent.
Ms. Donna, I was listening to the Congresswoman. I wanted to say some stuff, so I'm so excited to be on. Let's go.
But superintendent, let them know that you can take off your jacket if you have to as well. You use words really well, but if you have to,
high court. That's all I have to say.
Hey, you know what, superintendent, I think about all of us.
My brother Mohammed Zaid is here, so I have to act good. Because I don't have to worry when he's in the room. I don't have to worry at all. I'm good. And he knows how to handle business.
And speaking of politicians who would say things that will probably make you quite upset, to where you have to respond verbally and forcefully verbally, right? So that people know. Assemblywoman Dawn Fantasia and a series of Republicans have accused, like they've just been all in on saying Newark Public School and their budget is full of fraud and abuse. They say there should be a federal investigation of the superintendent and the school district. They have accused you of mismanaging funds. They have accused you of a whole lot, man. And they were like, you don't know how to
They talk about my birthday party of like 20 years ago.
I heard that.
I have a birthday party every year.
Heard that.
So talk to us. So first on that, right?
Yeah, that's
the Republicans have said that you should be investigated. The Assemblywoman from, I think, Franklin Township, Somerset County, has literally Sparta, the town, right, has literally accused you of fraud and mismanagement. You have to have responses to that. Talk to us about what's going on right now and how serious this is.
A couple of things. Thank you so much for having me on, and definitely appreciate you for all of the work that you do. I do want to comment on what Mr. Riley said maybe about a minute ago, that words do matter. So the idea that people are saying, this is irrelevant, ridiculous, and whatnot, I would say we're in a time where we need to be cognizant that words actually do matter. So the idea that they have documents that were in fact requested through an Open Public Records Act request by local people who call themselves the media. I call them and reference some of them to be fake news reporters. Those people years ago requested documents and have actually given it to these Republicans. So local reporters from Newark are giving to these elected officials documents that they know from years ago that what they're saying they are untrue. So let's start unpacking it.
So they did, because they didn't publish this in their newspapers, right? They're not. They are giving
Oh
it
no,
to.
they left the truth out, and it'll be funny because if you do an Oprah request of who are those reporters, then I can actually give those to you, and maybe you could share it in your opportunity. I'm not telling you to do anything, but it should be clear to citizens in Newark that some of the local reporters are attached to interesting different organizations, follow the money, and it'll kind of tell its own story, if you will. But imagine for a moment right now that during the pandemic, the district received hundreds of millions of dollars. I knew at that point in time that I needed to get the community's assistance and support by having what I call stakeholder series. And what we did is we published in the public these dollars that were being spent. And ultimately, I want you to be aware that 2 years ago, I published this very user easy friendly read of how the money was spent, how it was allocated. And then in my highlights page, I shared how we're seeing a return on the investment of those dollars. And in addition to that, the part that they refuse to admit is that the state of New Jersey and all of the states throughout the entire country were in fact audited. And the state of New Jersey was given an opportunity to select 2 districts in the whole entire state of 600 plus districts. They were allowed to select only 2 where the feds audited the district. Newark Public Schools was one of them because we do not shy away from the awesome responsibility that we have of being New Jersey's largest school district. And in 2023, what they found were things to make commendations to, items that they were saying are in keeping with what are the allowable uses of these federal dollars. You have to understand, President Trump is who allocated dollars initially, and then President Biden continued with that exact same strategy into his administration. But in 2023, those dollars were in fact in Newark audited from concept to the actual final product over months. In addition, every year we have our own independent audit, not one that we do, but an independent auditor comes in. Here's 1 year's report, last year's report. Look at it. It is voluminous. Of the 5 last years, over 1,500 pages. Over the last year, thousands upon thousands of pages of documents, tens of thousands of pages of documents. Why? Because we understand that having over $1 billion in our organization and letting the public, the citizens of Newark in particular, who are taxpayers, it's important for them to know how their dollars are being spent. As a taxpayer in Newark, I want to make sure that the district and our municipality is spending, in fact, dollars appropriately. As the superintendent of schools, I'm doing just that. In addition, that report is reported out in the public by the independent auditor. Every quarter of every school year, we actually do a financial forecast so that the board and the public actually understands where we are with our finances, where are our shortcomings, so that there isn't a situation where people are like, oh my goodness, we have to find $20 billion because no one knows where the money is at. That is not what happens in Newark. And for anyone to suggest that we have people who do no-show jobs, the idea that we don't know how to spend money properly, you may not like where we spend the money. That's a fair debate. But to say that we're doing something illegal is so far from the truth that it can be easily just called what it is, a lie.
You're muted, Jonathan.
You have talked about a federal audit that took place in 2023. And you have talked about every single year we are audited by the state. They produce documents every year.
No,
the
It's
federal
I want to
government.
clarify. We're
facts.
audited by an independent auditor. So it's not the state. But I want you to know that some of these very same elected officials have written to New Jersey's auditor the importance of monitoring the district. Remember the lies that I said reporters have shared, and they're not all in Newark, by the way. There are a couple that are in other cities in New Jersey with a very special interest, I might add. The auditor that I'm talking about is an independent auditor. Some of these same elected officials are putting their thumb on the scale. An audit that usually takes about 3 months to complete in any district, including Newark. These auditors have been here for now almost 2 years, because these particular elected officials have indicated, oh, there must be something going on in Newark. For over 2 years, they have been doing this. The cyberbullying attack that has occurred over the last 2 weeks or so is in keeping, because that report is supposed to actually come out. And remember, the state auditor is supposed to be free of any influences from anybody. I'm not saying that they're being influenced by anybody. All I'm just saying is that there's at least 1 or 2 of these same elected officials who either are signing these letters or making these conversations publicly, have put their thumb on the scale of that report, which hasn't come back yet. We're awaiting that report so that we can actually address any issues that they may think are important to the people who are creating not much to do about anything, because what they're doing is creating attention here because they're having a problem there. Their problems are what they should be focusing on.
They're deflected. Superintendent, who has to pay for these auditors?
Sorry?
Who's paying these auditors?
Oh, the auditors from the state, that's paid by the great taxpayers of New Jersey. So you, Zaid, the good.
But but it's not coming out of your funds. Is this general tax?
No, this is
okay.
Their taxpayers that they're trying to say they're supporting are paying for this 2-year audit.
Okay.
And just for clarification, also, right now the independent auditor had an audit that was supposed to take 3 months. They've been doing it.
The independent auditors are people who work. They're not our employees. Independent auditors are the district. The state's auditors is from the New Jersey legislators.
Okay, so the New Jersey legislators auditors have been auditing Newark for over 1.5 years, and something
this July will make it 2 years.
So the state's auditors have been in Newark auditing Newark for 2 years this July, in something that should take 3 months.
Yeah.
So the auditing process has been super extensive. Like if there's something to be found, they would find it clearly. And they're supposed to have come out with the report, but hopefully they will come out with it finally in July.
I don't know when the report is going to come out. When it's done in other municipalities, other school districts, it's a 3-month process. But they wind up hearing all of this noise. And remember, it was created because there was at least 1 or 2 of those folks, good folks, that is, that actually wrote that there must be some review, as if we're not doing our own reviews independent of the district. In fact, John, it's a good argument that is made. Are we watching our dollars? It is $1.6 billion. So I get it, but the idea that we are doing that and there are hardly any other districts in New Jersey doing that is something that I would ask those people, well, how's what's going on under your hood? Because I know what's happening in my hood.
Now, you said that it's deflect from other issues. What are some of the issues? I know that right now the funding formula, and a lot of Republicans, a lot of districts are suburban districts. Many of them have complained about the funding formula. They say basically Newark gets too much money. That was part of the question in the governor's race. And many districts, suburban districts, find that they have less money, and they're
Yes.
complaining about that.
So let's
What
talk
is-
about that. There's one school district in New Jersey, I'm not going to be specific, has a little over 700 students in it. They have a superintendent, they have a school business administrator, they have attorneys, they have facility staff, they have cafeteria staff, and they have 2 principals. I have schools that are bigger than that district. So you can't compare that district of 700 plus students with 44,000 students plus all of the students that are in charter schools. I have almost 60,000 school-age children in Newark. You can't compare the two. So the problem is multifold. One of the problems is that enrollment is decreasing across the whole United States. Reportedly, about 4 million less students in public schools. I believe I had shared that previously on All Politics, our local, maybe at the start of this past year or the year before. What happens is that there are schools all throughout New Jersey that have less students in them. So one of the strategies is called right sizing. You right size the school. If you have 2 classrooms of 10 kids, you right size it by saying you only need 1 teacher. 1 teacher, 20 students. That's how you right size a district that has low enrollment. But you have to make the decision if that's the right decision to make. Listen, my colleagues all across this entire state and the country are struggling with this problem. And I can feel the stresses of it. Because when the district was under state operation, in 1 school year, we were forced to close 15 schools. We laid off over 1,000 teachers. We laid off over 2,500 employees. We took thousands of students and we said, you can't go to that school anymore that's closest to your house because we closed it. And nobody in the state, we had students with signs saying, this is my favorite school. We had adults with signs saying, my graduation was here. I met my girlfriend in this high school, and we eventually became married and have kids. I'm seeing that today. Let me tell you, my heart goes out to all of the boys and girls that are making signs and are in situations where their schools are in fact closing. Right sizing is one way. Guess what's another way? If you don't want to close your schools, increasing taxes is another strategy. And we see and hear that there are districts all across New Jersey that are saying, we have to increase our taxes. We have to increase our taxes. That is a strategy. Now, I'm not saying that I know that in that particular school, that district, that's the correct strategy. That's on that superintendent. That superintendent knows if raising taxes for their community is the right strategy. Because right sizing means laying people off. Increasing taxes means pissing people off.
And
so
just saying,
the dilemmas that people are having right now. And so to Donna's point, it's far easier to say Newark gets all of this money. Hello, I have over 13,000 bilingual students who are mastering English because they do not speak English and they're still required to take the state test. I have over 6,000 students that have an IEP that have they're my children with exceptionalities that require additional resources and services. We don't send children out en masse anymore. This district used to send out of district almost like 1,000 students, and that was costing the district a lot. So our strategy was to actually create programming in the district. We've opened up our first autism school and filled it up immediately instead of sending those students to some other district, not to another public school district. That would be a good thing, but ultimately to another entity, private entities, if you will, that are, for the most part, doing an absolutely incredible job, and anyone in their right mind would send their children there. But people in their right mind are seeing that in the city of Newark, in the Newark Public Schools, we're actually addressing our own problem instead of blaming other communities for it. Last thing that I would say on this is any of the little boys and little girls that are not from the city of Newark, I want them to know that the way that we make this world a far better place is with them and the boys and girls that attend the schools that I lead. And that whenever somebody is telling you that the other is the problem, and somebody who actually wants to say that others dwell in misery, it's really because the people that are in front of them are the utter failure.
Wow. All right. And it's really interesting that you've talked about a lot when it comes to not just what some of the basis for this stuff is, but why they're potentially doing it. In this other part, I'm going to go to a story that speaks to this. It's a separate issue, but it's the same issue. I've seen this in a series of local newspapers. It is the $498 million for a school. And I think that particular issue is being used to fuel others. It's one that when I looked at it, I'm like, my question was, why is the district spending $498 million for a school? Couldn't it, and a school that we don't own yet, right? Like apparently it's a school that is owned by a church, owned by someone else, and that the district is paying to renovate it, fix it up. And according to these stories, that we still don't own the school. It seems, wouldn't it be cheaper to build a school from scratch as opposed to spending $498 million for a school? So talk to me about this. Help me understand why it is better to put $498 million in a school that we won't own as opposed to building one ground up from scratch.
So I just want to do a footnote just on the last piece. If you just give me the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely.
Any of my colleagues in New Jersey who are kind of going through it can always feel free to reach out to me. I do talk to a number of superintendents in New Jersey. I do talk with superintendents across the country that are in a similar situation like we have or are going through it right now. And, we can assist and support each other in the most hardest of times. And I invite any of them who want to just hear some of what we've done to feel free to reach out. With regards to your question, there's a lot that you said that's actually not correct. So it's important for people to understand that Newark Public Schools is one of the what used to be called 31 Abbott school districts. Now we're called School Development Authority districts. And what the elected officials agreed to is that a school district like Newark and the other 30 of them in New Jersey, we're not allowed to build our own schools. I cannot hire a developer right now. I cannot purchase property right now. I am not allowed to do that. The only entity that's allowed to build schools in Newark for Newark Public Schools is called the Schools Development Authority. Now, I want you to know that during state operation, we were supposed to have 40 new school buildings. They have built 9 of them. Now, I want you to be aware that the 10th school that is going to open is New University High School. Now, why that high school? I want you to be aware that of the 9 new schools that were built, none of the schools are in the South Ward. They built schools all throughout the rest of the city of Newark, but not in the South Ward. So I was given the opportunity to open up the last new school building before they changed their plan. And I said that new school has to be at University High School. Not because I was the principal and the new school was supposed to be built when I was the principal, but because the people of the South Ward deserve everything that everyone in the other wards has already received, which is to have a new building. That is why the new University High School and it's scheduled to open up in about
Jasmine, you hear that?
9. So that's where that is. With regards to Riverfront Elementary School, we're not paying somebody to build a school. A developer is actually knocking down the building that's there and actually building a school. And what we're going to do, what the law does allow us to do, it allows us to get into a lease agreement and lease the property. That agreement that we're in does not allow us at any time to purchase the property. That's a whole other type of agreement, and it has a lot of other legal conditions. And so that is why we cannot, like a lot of people are saying, why don't you just buy it? Because there's a legal requirement that we must comply with if that's the deal that we were dealing with. That is not the agreement that we're in. However, this lease does say that upon execution of the couple of months before the 30th year, the district does have the option to purchase it at $1,000. So there is language that would allow decision makers 30 years from now to buy the property, but we cannot go into an agreement saying we are actually going to purchase it. That is something in the future that they will decide. So what is happening? The developer is opening up a new school, and somebody's going to lease from it. And them reaching out to us, they're seeing that the Schools Development Authority has only built 9 schools out of 40. They've heard that the Schools Development Authority is going to build 13 more new schools in Newark. We're going to get 13 more new schools in Newark. That's going to happen, but we have an immediate problem right now. All throughout our city, you're seeing all of this housing. So what we're doing is a lease agreement. And so the financing of it is what gets to the exorbitant amount. The actual building of the school is consistent with the average school that is built by the Schools Development Authority, but it's not being purchased for what it's worth. The actual building has to be financed. And so what could we afford in a lease? We can afford about what was outlined in the rent schedule, about $1.3 million. I have to, from the money that I receive from the students that are enrolled in the district, we have calculated the math because we actually know how to do that. And about $1.3 or so million on average a month is something that we can actually allocate to this project. We do not begin paying it. Well, it's all in the lease agreements as to when we actually begin the payment process, but the scheduled tentative date of the schedule of the school opening would be in 2028. What the board approved was not the lease. What the board approved was the concept of this lease. There are requirements, legal requirements that we have to abide by in order for it to be processed. And people writing a letter to the commissioner, the controller, and the local finance board is not in keeping with what the law says. There are legal requirements that we need to abide by. We're making sure that we are adhering to those, and we're extremely excited to be able to not only do a groundbreaking, but to open the school for a much needed school in the East Ward. But I want to make the point that all of the schools are not being, all of the wards are not being left behind. Being a kid of this city, I know how we do. So I needed to make sure I took care of the South Ward because I was born in the South Ward. I need to make sure I was taking care of the East Ward because that's where I grew up for the majority of my time. In the Central Ward, we will have a new Morton Street School eventually opening up. We're talking about into the next decade where a lot of that will occur. We're going to have a new East Side in the East Ward and then renovate the building after we do a number of new schools in the East Ward, where the old East Side High School will serve as swing space during that time period. We have a new media high school in the South Ward. We have renovations to Hawthorne when we do the new university. We have Bregaw Elementary School being returned back to the Newark Public Schools. It was leased for over 15 years or so to one of the charter schools in Newark. In the West Ward, we're getting Boylan Street back. That was also leased to one of the charter schools, and we'll be getting that school back. We have plans for 15th Avenue, as well as South Street, as well as Ridge Street School in the North Ward. That school already has the land for the new school, so there's a lot in play. Our goal will be to open a new school every single one of the next 5 years and clearly outline how in the next decade we open up the rest.
So really, this is part of a larger facilities question. I want to jump back to the school, the 498 million school in the South Ward, right? It seems like you're saying that a developer was building it and somebody was going to get it. Is there a chance that Newark would have to pay for it anyway? Let's
Well,
say hypothetically.
that's a great point. So anything that is a school in Newark, unless it's a private school, the district in one way or another is paying for it.
Can you break that down? Like, are
Sure.
you talking about charters, right? Like,
Sure.
in other words,
So absolutely. So of the $1.6 billion, close to $500 million of that goes to charter schools.
can you repeat that?
I'll do it slower. Of the $1.6 billion that we have in Newark Public Schools, about 500 million of that goes to charter schools.
Wow.
Now, I want you
Wow.
to understand what that means.
Half.
What I want you to understand what that means, that each of the charter schools has a charter, and in it, they outline the number of students that they expect to service. And then what we have to do is we're told by the state sometime in July, we issue them a check for all of the students that they're supposed to have. I say supposed to have, not how many they actually have. And then we get money eventually back from that allocation of dollars. Let me be clear, because somebody out there is going to be quick to say, oh, this is a charter school. We did the whole charter school, district school debate during the Janey administration. And we have no time to go back to any of that nonsense. This is about people who are interested in educating children well, and that's the conversation that is the focal point of the ultimate point that I'm making. The difference is I outline a strategy for anyone who's interested in educating children in Newark to assist us in. So every charter school in Newark wants to grow. I can outline and have outlined a plan to doing that. But ultimately, if the district keeps all of the students who don't speak English, remember that my job is to educate all of them. For every classroom of multi-language learners, I have to provide at minimum 2 teachers.
Right.
Now think about this. If a child has an IEP, there are students with IEPs in charter schools. That is true. The idea, though, is that half of the 6,000 or so in Newark Public Schools are of the hardest to serve. Remember when I said before, they usually went to out-of-district services, and we have actually brought them back into the district. So think about this. There is a child in the district, not any one particular, I'm just giving you a scenario, that needs a special education teacher, needs a teacher aide, may need a personal aide, may need a nurse's aide because the child has a trach or has a stomach tube, may actually need a nurse, needs a learning consultant, a social worker, and a psychologist, may need physical therapy, may need occupational therapy. So I've already outlined that for a group of students, I already need 10 employees, when if we're educating general education students, you only need 1. So what happens is that the less number of general education students in the district, the greater amount of money the district needs to better service the kids.
Right.
So what happens is that if general education students leave out of the district, then the funds that I actually need to do a far better job become more complicated. The lucky part, I keep telling people that there's a lucky part in this whole scenario, is that my mom raised my 3 older sisters and me on a $350 welfare check. So I know how to do a lot with very little. Ultimately, when we look at student achievement data, remember that I said multi-language learners are required to take state tests depending on what tier they are. So we have students who don't speak English taking a mathematics test, and that mathematics test is nowadays different than when we were in school. So there's a lot of writing or reading that they would actually have to complete, and writing that they would need to do to actually complete those particular questions, whether it's online or online multiple choice questions that they would have to answer. So when we talk about student achievement, the district has in New Jersey the largest number of hardest to serve students. And we pride ourselves in making sure that we do a really good job for them. That's why we're having more students enroll in the district. Our enrollment now is much larger than a decade ago. That's the reason why we're not building new schools because we have more money. We're building more schools because we have more kids. And not only that, that the footprint in Newark is growing in such a way that there is, in the opening of housing and development in Newark, the need for other schools are occurring. That's why you're seeing our charter school friends saying, oh, we're also going to open up an additional school, or we're getting expansion requests being made because we want to assist in the district's efforts to educate all of the children. My only footnote is that when we say educate all of the children, it's actually all of the children.
And that is an important distinction to make. But before, I just want to get back to the thing that we talked about.
Yeah.
If that building was not bought, but you said the developer created it, the developer was creating a school that someone would get into. If Newark said no to that building, is there a chance that Newark would have to pay for it anyway?
When you say absolutely, yes.
And why would that
be? The only exception to that rule is if a private school was built in its place. So that would go through private funding, things of that nature. So the whole idea of entities going into a lease agreement or purchasing it, where do those dollars come from? Well, the way that charter schools in Newark receive the 90% allocation that they actually get is from the district. We send the checks to the charter schools at the start of the year. So ultimately, in the end,
if
a charter school was running it, unless some philanthropist decided to pay it off for them, they would be having to pay it, and that would mean it would be coming from the dollars that the state give the district.
So if Newark did not pay for it and a charter school took it over, Newark would still, in effect, have to pay for it.
Oh, the whole idea of where's the money coming from, you've clearly articulated it already more than one time, and beautifully so. One of the reasons of the greatness of the education that children in Newark actually get are manifested in the brilliance of a number of things that you've said on a couple of the segments that I've not only heard, but have been on as well. Absolutely right. So if the argument is you don't want Newark Public Schools to have it, then we should be hearing that nobody should have it. And the reason why the idea of the need of the school is prevalent, and the strategy that we have behind it, having lived in Down Neck the majority of my entire life, the actual developer is creating a parking lot underground because it's very, very congested and it's hard to park. So they're even thinking about how would a new school with all of this housing going up, how would the community be able to acclimate to it? Well, the community needs it. That's why more families are moving to Newark because of the opportunities that their children are in fact being provided in our schools. That school and Hawkins Street School, Wilson Avenue School, Avon Avenue School, Ivy Hill, Lincoln, Roberto Clemente. In every single one of our wards, there are incredible opportunities that are being afforded people. And it doesn't upset me. It's a little bothersome that people want to make this, or at least insinuate that, oh, you know, it's pre-1967. It isn't. We are in a far better place than the district has ever been. The city of Newark is in a far better place than it has ever been. And anybody who has anything negative to say, I'm not talking about critiquing ourselves in Newark. We are worthy of the limelight. But those people who make claims that things are stolen, that there's fraud, that's the biggest joke that exists themselves.
Now, Ed, you had a question?
I did.
Yeah, I was gonna say I had a question.
So, Roger, I just want to ask you, jump back to something, because obviously when we hear $500 million, it's a lot of money, right? What type of oversight do the Board of Education have once we write that check to the charters? What type of oversight do we have?
Zero.
Wow.
We do not govern over charter schools. It's weird that you said that. I received an email today about a child who's upset. It's not important what school. It's not one of the ones that the district runs. And he's like, he feels like he hit a wall and he doesn't know what to do. And he reached out. The only thing that I can do is say to him, if he wants to attend one of the district schools, it's something that if his parent wants him to do, that we can make happen. I want to be clear that, we have definitely at least one in every school of somebody who's saying, oh, things can be better. Do we have more than one? Probably so. Reality check. The issue, though, is that we're big enough to say that we recognize what our issues are and that we work hard when they're true to do something about it. We don't allow people to dwell. We want people to maximize their truest, fullest potential. And we do that because that's what public education is supposed to be about. We educate the public. So that's one of the reasons why I did the TV show that I did, because I wanted people to understand that you cannot follow a lie and continue to repeat a lie and then make people think that it's true, because all you do is you fester in your own lie. We are very, very clear with regards to making sure people are aware of everything that we are actually doing. And that whenever we are not, we have people in the city of Newark that are ready to call us out on it. They call me directly, hey, that wasn't clear. I don't understand. Make this clearer for me. That's what I love about our city. It's not that we need somebody else to look over our shoulders. Remember, for 25 years, the state operated the district and left the district in a situation that required a lot of work to actually get it to where it is right now. And to where it is right now, also understand we're not even satisfied with that. We had the global pandemic in the middle of it that disrupted education, disrupted our social well-being, unlike anything in our respective lifetimes. And I'm so proud of our students. I'm so proud of our teachers, staff, and our principals. I'm proud of our legislators of the 28th and the 29th districts. Our local officials who support the district are clear on their responsibilities to stay true to the facts that are actually before them and not be mesmerized by a lot of noise. Because ultimately, in the end, it's a distraction from what the real issues are. And we need to always stay focused on the
Superintendent, real briefly, just to follow up on Ed's question, I have like two questions, 2 or 3. While you don't have, I just want this to be crystal clear, you don't have oversight of the charter schools. However, you do have a line item in your budget where you have to carve out money that has to go to the charter schools, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so if you start out with 100, whatever that percentage is, you have to minus that, and then the rest is your budget after you do that.
That's correct.
The loss of federal funding, when this administration came in, how have you made up for that? I know you mentioned earlier that one strategy is raising taxes, but realizing when you're in a city that already is, we're have a lot going on, how were you able to make up for the funds that may have been cut?
Yes.
Were any funds cut, and how were you able to
Oh,
make up for them?
absolutely. We actually need about $16 million to actually move forward. And what I have not done, you haven't heard my state legislators saying, "Oh, an injustice." The governor now and the governor previously have created these caps on the budget in the strategy of the last two budgets. And while arguably people will say this is disadvantageous for this community or that community, they saw that as the fairest distribution. For us to get about $16 million more, the districts that have lost students would be losing more money right now. And they wanted to create a calculator that would not devastate them. So how are we handling it? Well, I want you to understand that for the last 10 years, we've paid over $1.5 billion in taxes in the city of Newark. And that we have a 2% increase every single year as outlined as the floor by the laws in this state. If I needed to do that to compensate for that $60 million, then that's what I would have done. So what we've done instead is we've looked at what our strategies are ahead of us and have made the decision to streamline some of the strategies to actually maximize impact now and then not worry about the fact that we don't have the dollars. So one of the things that I could have done, and I met with my teaching staff, I could have laid off about 200 employees. And I'm talking about 200 teachers.
Wow.
Usually food service workers, custodians, security guards, people who have no idea the important work that those employees do. Sometimes, more likely than not, those are the first ones to go. So when we're actually talking about teachers, now we're talking about a significant number of dollars. And I'm talking about people who are doing an incredible job and making an incredible impact for our students. I shared with them that that's an outline of a reality that could have happened. And because I was hearing all these conversations across the state, I didn't want to numb them to our strategy. So what we've done instead is taken, let's say, we're going to make repairs at a particular school, and we have a set aside amount of money that we're going to do all of the floors at the same time. Well, now what we've done is said, all right, we're going to fix a particular grade level and then make sure the next year, if we're doing K-2, then next year we do third grade because K-2 is already done, or we do 3, 4, 5. That way, when those K-2 go to 3, 4, 5, their environment is consistent with what the expectations are. You may have heard it. There are schools without air conditioning because I have 14 school buildings that were built in the 1800s. 14 of them. And one, Lafayette Street School, as you've heard me say already before, it was built during the Polk administration. And unfortunately, some people who are not historians don't even know who Polk was, but they know who Lincoln was. 10 years before Abraham Lincoln was principal, students were at Lafayette Street School. And I still have students in that school today.
Wow.
So why did we not return back from the pandemic fast like everybody else? Because I actually had schools with nails in floors and nails in windows that we actually had to make major reparations. So our strategy is to gradually, in an incremental way, utilize the dollars we do have, given the fact that we have dollars that we need.
So, Roger, I think it's a lot easier for me to call you a cheat. It's a lot easier for me to call you a liar because everything you're saying is too goddamn complicated. And to believe you were able to manage all of that and still not lay off 200 teachers. I think that we should be celebrating you because I think if you had laid off those teachers, that would really have been a problem in the city of Newark, right? Because I think people would have been lining up protesting. I think we should be saying thank you and not calling you a cheat. And listen, Roger, I'm an accountant. My undergraduate degree is in accounting. You did some real creative accounting.
I appreciate that. but we are Newark, and we are not shying away from, external pressures. We understand that what people are living is very, very difficult, but people should look to us. And I know it may be difficult, a pill to swallow, to say, oh my goodness, we're in a worse situation than Newark. I can understand that, because Newark has been the butt of people's jokes, that is very, very difficult for people to say today, we are doing worse than Newark. So it's better to tell your constituents, Newark is the problem. Newark has caused this issue. It is easier to do that because people would actually believe it. There are people in Newark who are like, oh, things are not as good as they once were. My graduation rate is 90%, John. We have issued in the last 5 years over $632 million in college scholarships.
Superintendent, you coming back with those numbers and the college grads and everything, because you got to come back with that whole speech. So don't let it go now.
Do one more. I have 894 kids who graduated from college with associate's degrees before they graduated
from high school. Can't stand it.
Keep going. And Roger,
I got more.
He's coming back in June with those numbers.
11 new schools. I'm opening a 12th one in September, and I'm opening up a new one every year thereafter.
Well, I just want to tell you, thank you for not laying off the teachers, because if you laid off the teachers, that would really have been a problem. And I think that the one thing we're going to say here is that, for all of those people, and we hear that too, Roger, we want to say, man, we appreciate you keeping those teachers employed, because none of us here and all of us who went to school in Newark, we understand what it means when a child has his favorite teacher in front of him and what that means, in terms of you being able to be successful in life. So again, man, I appreciate that.
I wanted you to know, if I could, John, as you all are bringing this to a close, I thank all of my teachers. I thank Ms. Del Val and Ms. Pavlo, my kindergarten teachers from Hawkins Street School, for teaching me the importance of caring about people beyond myself. Obviously, my mom, all of the teachers throughout all of my elementary grades. I can tell you all of their names right now, with Brent Ferrand and Mr. Chara, Ms. Donahue, Ms. Matheny, ending up my high school years at Science High School. It is a Newark Public Schools education that is helping me today, and a historic 10-year strategic plan. The next decade, 2020-30, has enabled us to go through the roughest of times of this world and to be able to come up delivering and growing.
Roger, thank you.
I want to add one more thing, because this is something that was announced last year, and newspapers literally did not cover it. One local newspaper covered it, and they put this in the third paragraph. The others just ignored it. The State Department of Education, New Jersey State Department of Education, for the first time declared that Newark, New Jersey, was a high-performing district. The legislature, the assemblywoman who we talked about in the beginning of the show, and the Fox News thing talked about third grade reading scores, and were trying to make it seem like Newark was a failing district. Newark is a high-performing district. Most of our politicians don't talk about it. Most people don't know about it. Why not? And what are you doing to change that so that people know that Newark is officially a high-performing district?
Listen, I'm not saying that all local reporters are bad. Look, your organization is called All Politics Are Local, so I get it. But ultimately, in the end, one of the reasons why it takes me great pleasure in being in this opportunity is because unless you edit out my words, I get to say what I want, as opposed to you selecting what I wrote and then you choosing what you print. So I shared with you that local news reporters, and one not so close, did an Oprah request of the district, a legal request of information, and we provided them the information. The one about the $1.4 million contract, the reporter received this report. And on page 2, because they asked, we want to see payment to the consultant. The reporter asked for it. We put the answer in here that there is no responsive document because the reporter never was actually issued a purchase order, which is the official document that says you're actually now going to get paid. Same thing like we went to Hawaii. There are actually people all throughout New Jersey that may actually believe that lie. And all I would say to them, how did we get there? We didn't walk. So there has to be a plane ticket. There has to be a hotel stay unless we decided to sleep on a bench. And then we had to have eaten something unless we just asked people for food. And then we needed to pay a registration fee. Where are all of those checks?
Right.
If you believe the elected officials, why can't they show you those documents?
Right.
The reason why is very simple. Because the reporter who has the information and the elected officials who have the information know that there's no such trips at all.
Now, I'm going to say something that you may or may not agree with. When you look at the Assemblywoman Dawn Fantasia, we see that she works for a charter school. She's an administrator at a charter school. We say that there are $500 million that goes to charter schools, and those charter schools don't or want to expand. And when we look at a lot of local media, we look at who funds them, and some of the same funding can go back to many of the people who would fund or sponsor or be politically aligned with charters and the charter movement. I know you don't necessarily agree with this, but I think that there may be some things put together that I think our community should start asking more questions about. As in, why is it that we don't know more of these things? And let's start questioning like the political implications of charter money in our politics or charter money. Like every time we have a board election, it is, we know, and this is public, right? Like we know that there's somebody from the North Ward. We know that there's someone from the mayor. We know that there's someone who represents charters. We know that they get together. It's a unity ticket. That's cool. Why?
Well,
and I think that these questions are important.
I'm sorry.
And I know you might not agree with that.
I'm not a politician. I'm an educator. I went to school to help the dreams of children become realized. And when I was little, there was like this phrase, people who live in glass houses should never throw stones. We are always trying to be better than what we've ever been. We're not ever trying to regress. I don't talk about other superintendents because I know how difficult it is, and I don't like people talking about me. I don't talk about politicians unless I'm talking to them in their face. So all I would say this to you, I have no idea what this politician does during the day. It's none of my business. But you're saying that they work in a charter school during the day. How is it possible to then vote during the day in Trenton if they're working in a school? So that's beyond me. I have no knowledge of any of that. And it's quite frankly something that doesn't concern me. What concerns me is that the children in Newark are doing so well. And I want you to know that so well is never good enough for us in Newark. We don't need somebody from outside to say that's not good enough. And we definitely don't need anybody who is in Newark, who really is an outsider just residing here for a minute, to comment and critique anything that they have no clue about. Needless to say, people running for any office.
We know that we've got come to the end of our time. I know we have Rhino, we have Akeem stay on because after the superintendent goes off, we want to talk for a few minutes about some things that are going on. But when we ask you the question about who's your favorite hip hop artist, we know
let
right
Rhino.
now
We gotta let
that
Rhino
the
answer that.
is-
Rhino gotta ask that question.
Wait.
And we should all know.
I gotta change it up.
Okay.
I have to let you know how cool I am.
Okay.
Given what I've heard over the last just 2 weeks, just what I've heard over the last 2 weeks. sometimes I say things and they have double meanings. So I don't know if this is an example of it, but I would say ludicrous.
Oh, yeah. That is true.
All right, Rhino and Hakeem, what say you?
Excellent.
But Superintendent, who do you
have these
and
two
you
brothers-
normally say
you have
Tupac,
these two
right?
brothers on. Wait, you have these two brothers on now, next, or whatnot. You have the beautiful Congresswoman. Like, what's up? We have to.
But Superintendent,
pretty beautiful people on when I'm talking.
Superintendent, I want to be clear. You normally say Tupac, correct?
That's correct.
No, Ja Rule. He always
That's
says Ja
correct.
Rule.
That's
Ja Rule. Okay. Okay. So you went from Ja Rule to ludicrous. Okay.
Some people have gotten me so excited that I felt ludicrous was more appropriate given some person.
That's what Mike Tyson used to say. This is ludicrous.
Yeah, you did a good job, though. You did a good job in saying it that way.
Well, we hope to see you in June with all of the end of the year stats, sir.
Oh my goodness, we're extremely excited to end the school year strong. To those students that are listening, I want them to know that the way that we make Newark better and the rest of New Jersey better is by doing what they're doing right now. Coming to school, being on time, doing great in school, making sure that they're respecting our young ladies if they're guys, and young ladies respecting themselves, committing themselves to excellence, making the lives of their families better. That's how we do it. What we're doing is what no one should be afraid of, that we're going to be at the table at every opportunity under the sun, because the times of us not being at these critical tables are so far gone that there are only people who want us to remember remnants of it, and we will not do that.
Well, one thing is for sure, that we want to say off the bat, Roger, that we appreciate you for coming up here. And I know you're going to understand this word for never being a punk to come up here, right? And we say to all those people who want to try to chop up things, we're not going to chop it up. You heard Roger, you heard all of his words. Feel free to go in and take the pieces you want, but we will advise you, do not cut his words up. Let his words be his words. He said it. And again, I'll end this simply by saying, again, Roger, I appreciate you not getting rid of those 200 teachers, my brother. I really do appreciate that.
I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for everything that you're doing, and keep the great work going.
All right, thank you. And take
Bye-bye
care.
now.
Take care.
Thank
And drink water. Always drink more water. You're doing a lot of work.
Look, I will.
All right.
I appreciate y'all.
All right, Roger.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Hey,
All right.
let me tell y'all something, and y'all know this is tax season. So when
They're
somebody
about
says,
whooping my behind.
Yeah, and John, you know this. When you got papers all over the place, and and you still have to maintain a budget and all of that, and somebody got to pull it together. I want y'all to understand what he just said. Because remember, he said there was two things that he could have did. He said there's something called right sizing, and then he said there was also something called increasing taxes. He said the increasing taxes part would piss people off, right? The other part was right sizing, and then that would mean laying people off. This brother just said he did not lay off 200 teachers, but he could have in order to balance the books. Yo, man, y'all know that most Black women are the head of their families, right? And we know that most teachers are women. Think about how that would have affected so many young people's lives and families in our community, right? That's really, and if I was doing a story, that would be a headline.
And there are those 5 key words. Newark is a high-performing district.
Exactly. That's what John said. John, you said that last year. I think you were telling us that.
He's been saying it all year.
Yeah, like the high performance district.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this is something that politicians are so when the news about third grade scores is like literally from a couple of years back, right? And that just keeps coming up, as in, but they don't talk about the remediation. They don't talk about what we did in order to deal with it. They didn't talk about those scores or snapshots in time. And there's a whole lot of things that happened with those kids that turned out from 200 to 12, right? And even that, right? It's like we need to do more. But when we're talking about like the attitude that people have is they look at it and they be like, oh, so our conclusion isn't that Newark looks at certain scores and does and deals with it, literally identifies kids, gives them extra help, and gets them to another level. They're just like, it is what Newark is, because people are so used to Black and brown as failure, right? Like, I think that is a thing that we really have to have, that we really have to recognize, right? Like, so, and this is true. It's funny because you have two Gen Xers in the mayor and in the superintendent, two people born about the same time, about the same year, and they both came into positions where there were catastrophic problems in the city, problems of violence, and how do you do it, right? And in the superintendent, you are the first superintendent that is locally that of local control in over 20 years, and you have to really recreate or rebuild both of these institutions in order to answer the protracted problems that we grew up with. Like, we grew up as kids with these problems, and you have two leaders, one in education and one in the city, that have literally looked at these problems that we thought were intractable and gave us something that we never thought we'd see. We never thought we'd see violence in the city of Newark, like violent crime in the city of Newark, go down in the way it has. So where the predominant form of murder is domestic violence, right? Which means that you have to go, and yes, they have programs for that. They are working on that, but getting the numbers down from over 100 in the 90s, like it's like 120, 100, like those, right? To getting them down to where they are right now, in like 23, 24, in terms of last year. We didn't think we'd have decreases, right? Historic lows like that haven't been seen since the 50s or 60s.
But Jonathan,
we also didn't think that Newark would be considered a high performing district. So those are just some things to just appreciate in terms of what we're doing now.
So obviously at 9:08 we're gonna have to do a part 2 of this. But
absolutely. But I want to also talk to Rhino and
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So we're here to talk about some Bronx history right now. Right. So continue with the education.
Right. So Rhino, Hakeem, welcome. I'm glad to see both of you, brothers. And now, question. You know that Africa Bambaataa passed away, and that is a lot of questions. A lot of people are being very muted in what they're saying, because there seems to be, like, there were a lot of allegations of child molestation, etc., right? Like those things that have just been persistent. Is that what is? And I know that there are other things that are going on that you want to talk about, but just, I know we're over time, but both of you are on here, and I haven't seen both of you in a long time, so I want to make sure that you have some time. And I'm guessing, now maybe I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that both of you popped on because of Bambaataa's death. Am I wrong, or what's up? Yeah. Talk to me.
No, you are correct. Can you hear me?
We hear you. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah. No, you're right. I wanted to come on just to you know, it's a conflicting thing. You know what I'm saying? You know, on one side, Africa Bambaataa has done one of the greatest, and I mean, when I say greatest, I mean like in size form, one of the greatest things for the community. He created hip hop. He helped create hip hop. You know what I'm saying? He helped transform the gangs into crews, and those crews would battle each other through cultural expression instead of resorting to violence. So that, just number one, was super huge. and necessary for our communities all over the globe, really. So that we got to pay respects to Africa Bambaataa. We got to pay respects to what he brought to the table for hip hop. Now, on the flip side, he has these allegations that there's no way around that. There's no way around that, man. And I remember when the allegations first came out. I believe it was 2016. The first thing I said was like, well, if he's guilty of it, if he did it, he's gonna have to face whatever consequences come. He's gonna have to face it, whatever. I mean, that's just it. There's no way around it. You know, there's no sugarcoating it. There's no ignoring it, pushing it to the side or under the rug. He's got to face that. He's got to deal with that. Unfortunately, it seems like he kind of hid away from it because he didn't speak on it. At one point, he didn't show up in court. So
was there ever a successful lawsuit? Was he ever prosecuted? Like, what is the furthest that any of that went?
I don't know. From what I understand, and maybe Hockey might have more info on this, but I remember that one of those cases came out that he was guilty. One of those cases came out that he was guilty, but then still there was no sentencing or any, there was nothing happened. Like he was still free on the street, So I'm very confused. I'm very confused on some of that, as far as what happened in the courts and how the courts were handling all of this. I know me personally, and I said it online that I feel that those who knew, because when the allegations came out, you had certain pioneers talking about, oh yeah, we knew about this. We knew this was going on.
Wow.
Yeah, but they just kind of let it they just let it go. And I feel like that is the time where, especially Zulu Nation, everybody that's down with Zulu Nation, I felt like that's where people need to step in and demand some justice from that level. You understand what I'm saying?
Especially if people are talking about we knew.
Before it gets to the media, before it gets to the courts, because when you deal with the media, you're dealing with other people in your business. You're dealing with other people handling these things. Same thing with the courts. You're dealing with other people who are handling these things. And when I say other people, I am talking about white folks. There's white folks that run media. There's white folks that run the courts.
I just want to push back on that a little bit. I think that if you molest children, they should be dealt with in the courts. They should be dealt with outside of the courts. I don't think
no. I'm not saying it never should have went to court.
Right.
I'm not saying it never should have went to court. I'm not saying it never should have went to court. What I'm saying is he should have got dealt with in the streets. There should have been some street justice as well. He should have got dealt with because there were people who knew that whole time. Right. There were people who knew and nobody said anything. Nobody did anything. And this just went on until he got caught, and it came out to the public. But I feel like it should have been addressed from that level immediately when even before it came out to the public, when these folks knew, something should have been done.
Right.
That's just my take on it. And it's just so complex, man. It's so complex because, so many of us, man, got love for Africa Bambaataa, for all that he's done, man, musically and culturally. So much love, man. And, it's just a huge disappointment, man, because nobody messing with the, when it comes to pedophilia, nobody messing with that, especially our people. We don't play around with that, and so there's a lot of disgust right now that's being displayed online and in the public, man, about Africa Bambaataa. There's a lot of disgust, there's a lot of mixed feelings, there's a lot of, it's just very complex, man.
A lot of disappointment.
Yeah, a lot of disappointment.
Hakeem. Hakeem, you there? Can you hear me?
He's muted. Hakeem muted, but I think he's thinking.
Well, yeah, no, I'll let you guys unmute me, so I don't want to overspeak. I don't want to. I'll let you guys unmute.
You're unmuted.
All right. So hurt people hurt people. And there's a lot of hurt people running around because they're hurt. Bambaataa is a human being, or was a human being. There's certain things that we cannot tolerate. However, too many of us tolerate it, and then we pick and choose who we want to hold accountable and who we don't want to hold accountable. And I do have a problem with that, because there's a lack of sincerity. And when Bambaataa passes and everybody's like, oh, what happened? We didn't get him. He should have paid. He should. This is bigger than hip hop. Big shout out to Dead Prez, who said it's bigger than hip hop. It is bigger than hip hop. Rape, sexual assault, pedophilia is something that's bigger than hip hop, been around longer than hip hop. There's, not to say we all know somebody, but we all know somebody. And I would just hope that, we look to heal the loved ones in our own lives before we condemn people, because we all going through something. We all going through something. We've all been pained, and we've all caused pain. Not to that level, but pain is relative when you're the victim of pain. When I found out 10 years ago, I was disgusted, and I've known Bam for a while. When I found out about these allegations 10 years ago, I can't have anything to do with Bambaataa. But those folks who were harmed by Bambaataa, who were victimized by Bambaataa, they needed to get their justice. Does his death serve their justice? I don't know. It's not up for me to say. He was sued, and for what I understand, he lost that lawsuit. He didn't show up to court. Who knows if he knew he was dying? That doesn't excuse anybody's behavior. But I think we should all reflect on what we're doing in our lives to make sure that that doesn't happen to our loved ones.
So you knew African Bambaataa personally, like you actually.
Yeah, I mean, I knew Bam. Through KRS-One, of course. He's a prominent DJ. He's DJed a lot of the parties that I had gone to, and of course, because of hip hop culture, I get access to certain legends, be it Bambaataa, Kool Herc, and what have you. When I found out about this is when I guess Bee Stinger went public 10 years ago. Yeah. And then it kind of all unraveled, and the rumors, the stories, and you hear it. It's mind blowing. To piggyback off what Rhino was saying about what he was able to help bring structure to in terms of hip hop culture, saved a lot of lives. It saved a lot of lives. We know what New York City, we know what America was in the 70s, especially after the pushback on civil rights and the Black Power movement. We know the divestment of Black communities by the system. We know the South Bronx is legendary. The Bronx is being, and somebody said something real deep early today. Blue Pill, Paul Moreland, he said about abandoned buildings, the people who are left abandoned in abandoned buildings. How in the 70s there were these rash of basically real estate owners burning their own properties for the tax money, and the lives that were left over in that mess, and the conditions that raised people, that grew people, be it in the street or coming out of the prison industrial complex. If you were running around in gangs like thousands of kids in New York City were doing in the 70s, you've witnessed, been a part of, heard stories of these same types of things. It's unfortunate. This is bigger than hip hop. This is a problem that has affected our community way before 1973. It's something that we have to deal with. It's a part of our experience here in America.
And I think part of the issue that I think everyone's having, and this is true within our community, of the people who knew but said nothing. Like when people found out about it, and
because
then
you died. That's why he said nothing. Because you like, these are very terroristic street gangs. Like the Zulu Nation was created by Savage Skulls, Black Spades, and a bunch of other New York City gangs. These people would kill you. Like, this is not like, oh, nobody said anything. Like, yeah, did you want to die? This is a different time and space. Like, nobody said anything. Yeah, well, no, that's not true. I've heard stories, about things that happened in the 70s, and people wanted to put hands on Bam and couldn't or didn't or whatever. Like, it wasn't like nobody said anything. It was like, if you weren't powerful enough to hold your own after you said what you said, then no, you wasn't gonna say nothing. I mean, it's people make it so like on and off. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. When there's so much of the same stuff happening in communities right now. You can go to the West Side in the Village every single day and see 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds walking around, teenagers who haven't quite found themselves yet. And nothing's good is coming from that situation. Are you intervening? Are you stopping it? Are you asking questions? No, we just kind of keep it moving. The lives that we can affect and have influence over, we protect as much as we can. But, am I trying to, or anybody trying to bully their way through the most notorious gangsters to put Bam in check? No.
Hakeem, Hakeem, to what you just said, I remember being like a teenager and walking home with my brother from the movies. And I had seen a man abusing a woman, and I asked my brother to help her. And my brother grabbed me and told me to come on. And then as we got further down the street, he explained to me, he said, Donna, if I would have stopped to help him, and then he did something to me, who was going to protect you? So that makes me think of what you just said, that it like you said, people see a lot of things, but are we often in a position to help? And what the situation may be and what people see. And then there were times, I can see in my generation where you might have heard people say, don't let nobody stay in the room with him or her by themselves, or something like that. So I can imagine the older generation, how things were handled much different than they are handled today.
Yeah, like I can remember growing up in East Orange, New Jersey, and crack hit the block, and the world turned upside down. And I would sit there and argue and berate some of my friends that had relationships with, why are you doing what you're doing? And that activity led to the destruction of the family. It led to the conditions would open up the doors for molestation and pedophilia and trauma and sexual abuse. So as much as we like to point the finger, and in a way, we kind of all guilty because we all participate in this culture. There was a thing in the 70s and the 80s. I remember as a little kid, 8, 9 years old, hearing my older cousins talk about the life and being in the life and what the life consisted of. And, you get an inkling when you're 8, 9, 10 years old. And when you get 16, 17, 18, you start to realize what the life is actually about. And you try to navigate circles that put you in harm's way. Thank God. Thank God for Brenda Green. You know what I mean? Had to be on when the street lights came on. But, through my cousins and my friends who, you know, I got to see things and experience things, and you don't quite understand things, and you figure out how rent was getting paid in some households and what was going on. Why didn't you stop it? Man, listen.
I know we're way past time. We're gonna have to.
I just want to ask Jonathan one more question. John, I just wanted, you said the Zulu Nation this morning. I heard Professor Carr talking about and Lamont King talking about being in Lamont King specifically being in a party in New York in the Zulu Nation and how they provided security and they likened them to the FOI. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Okay, because I didn't, I just wanted, there were some things that came out of like how they provide security, like in the Bronx, and and they had the Zulu Nation and how it was set up and everything.
Well, can I just shout out?
We're gonna definitely continue.
Can I just shout out? I interviewed Muhammad Islam, who is the head of security for Universal Zulu Nation. He's road manages Tribe, Buster, LL Cool J, head of security he's everything Zulu Nation, head of security. I interviewed him on the Hakeem Green show about a month and a half ago. You can go to the Madism platform, check out the interview with Muhammad Islam. And we talk about Bambaataa and, the life and what was going on back then. So if you want to get a clearer understanding from somebody who was actually in the trenches there, go to the Hakeem Green show and check out the interview with Muhammad Islam from the University of Zulu Nation.
Oh, absolutely will, man. Absolutely will. So thank you. We had a great show tonight. Thank all of our guests for coming on because we had a lot of guests on tonight. So special thanks to Superintendent León, to Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, to Dr. Kelly Harris for joining us about Paul Robeson, for Marquis Lewis, the candidate for the Essex County Commissioner's office, and also to Sophia Williams and Jian White, talking about the importance of Mumia Abu Jamal. So thank you all for coming on, and also thank you. Obviously, Rhino and Hakeem Green, and we got to get you back on, keeping on. Absolutely.
And don't forget, if Governor Cheryl was if she was your congresswoman, you got to vote next Thursday and to replace her for the 11th Congressional District. Election is next Thursday from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. in 11th Congressional District.
All right. Thank you and good night.